Chapter 177. He Yan didn't see Li Kuang for a few days. Li Kuang seemed to be deliberately avoiding him. He Yan couldn't find him, and his subordinates refused to tell He Yan where he was. He Yan blocked Li Kuang a few times, but Li Kuang didn't seem to want to talk to him. He Yan had no choice but to say, "Lord Li, before coming to the Rundu, I've already asked someone to ask for reinforcements. Moreover, I've also said that the Rundu's troops have a chance to fight against Yudo. Lord Li, why do you want to block your own path to a dead end? This is the Rundu, not Liangzhou." Li Kuang's attitude was also very tough, and he wasn't moved by He Yan's words. "Although you're the Muan Lang personally appointed by His Majesty, you don't have enough power to order me around. Regarding the night attack on the enemy camp, I'm very grateful for your help, but that's it. Whatever I do after this, you don't have to interfere." He Yan looked at him carefully. When he first came to the Rundu, although Li Kuang had a worried expression, he was still a little angry. But now, his expression was not right. His eyes were gloomy, as if he had made up his mind about something, and he was stubborn and unshakable. He Yan could tell that his mood was not good, and it wasn't only because of Yudo. "Lord Li, how do you plan to deal with the famine in the city?" He Yan looked at his back and asked. Li Kuang was shocked and said, "I've said it before, I have my own ways. This has nothing to do with you." He Yan walked in front of Li Kuang and looked him in the eyes. "Lord Li, I'm not from the Rundu, but I'm very clear about the current situation. Things haven't reached the worst point yet. We've burned the provisions of the Wudong people once, so we can kill their soldiers next time. If Lord Li continues to hold on to the idea of mutual destruction, we won't be able to fight this war. This city can't be defended at all." Her words were a little too serious. Li Kuang's face was filled with anger. "What do you know? I know that if Lord Li miscalculates the current situation, he will make the wrong decision." Li Kuang's eyes showed a little impatience. He tried his best to endure, but in the end, he couldn't help but push He Yan away and said, "I know what to do, I don't need you to tell me what to do." He strode out, not giving He Yan a chance to speak. He Yan frowned and stared at his back, the uneasiness in her heart growing stronger. She wasn't dealing with Li Kuang for the first time. Li Kuang's reaction was clearly that of someone who was at the end of the road. He Yan didn't want to believe in her other way, and He Yan couldn't convince him, so she couldn't command the Rundu's troops. Even if she knocked Li Kuang unconscious, the Rundu's soldiers wouldn't listen to her orders. Li Kuang had been leading these soldiers for too long. Perhaps because of this, he wouldn't choose the risky decision that He Yan mentioned. She slowly walked out of the house with a heavy heart. In the past few days, even Zhao Shiming came out less and less. There was less and less food. It was fine if she didn't walk around with an empty stomach, but once she walked, she would feel even more hungry. She wished that she could turn everything into food and stuff it into her mouth. Wyatt hadn't launched an attack on the Rundu yet. After that night's sneak attack and the burning of their provisions, Yudo probably wasn't as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. Wyatt definitely wanted to attack the city immediately, but the existence of General Feihong made them a little afraid. But this fear would eventually dissipate, and Wyatt would eventually discover the truth. They only needed to send someone to Huayuan to find out that the Rundu was fake. The moment Wyatt found out that General Feihong was fake, they would immediately attack the Rundu. So these few days were actually the days that He Yan fought for the Rundu's people. But Li Kuang was stubborn and conservative. As she walked, she bumped into Yi Luo. Compared to when He Yan first came to the Rundu, this girl looked a little thinner. Her originally egg-shaped face was now sharp from hunger, and she looked less sweet and more charming. But when she saw He Yan, she smiled and showed a familiar smile. "Xiao He Yan. Miss Yi Luo. Did you quarrel with Master?" Yi Luo pointed outside the door. "I just saw Master angrily rush out." "Xiao He Yan, please don't be angry with Master. Master's temper is a little straightforward, but he is a good person. If he offended Xiao He Yan, I will apologize to Xiao He Yan on behalf of Master." She was thinking of her master wholeheartedly. He Yen smiled bitterly and shook his head. It's fine, we just have some differences in opinion. Yi Luo nodded, not fully understanding. He Yen saw that she was holding something that looked like a garland of flowers in her hand and felt a little strange. He asked, there are still flowers now? Most of the edible things in the runda had already been dug out by the hungry people. How could there still be flowers to make garlands of flowers? Yi Luo smiled and handed the garland to He Yen. He Yen took it and saw that the garland was very small and exquisite. He didn't know what kind of grass it was made of, but it was dotted with small purple flowers. He Yen went closer to smell it, but Yi Luo hurriedly stopped him. You can't smell it, Xiao He Yen. This flower is poisonous. He Yen, poisonous? It's heartbreak grass. The more beautiful it is, the more poisonous it is. Everyone in the runda knows this, so no matter how hungry they are, they won't pick it to eat. Otherwise, why would I use it to make garlands of flowers? She sighed again. No matter what, poisonous weeds always grow especially luxuriant. If only the crops in the fields could be like this. Seeing that He Yen didn't say anything, Yi Luo smiled and said, Xiao He Yen, are you interested in this garland of flowers? This concubine can teach Xiao He Yen how to make garlands of flowers. Perhaps you can give it to your sweetheart. Your sweetheart will be very happy. She was still thinking about He Yan's imaginary sweetheart. He Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought that if she made a garland of flowers and gave it to Xiao Ju would probably think that she was crazy and beat her to death. Forget it. He Yen shook his head. He doesn't like flowers and grass. I appreciate Miss Yi Luo's good intentions. Yi Luo was a little disappointed. She took the garland of flowers from He Yan's hands and said, all right then. But how can there be no girls who like flowers and grass? When Master picked flowers for me, I was happy for a while. Lordly. He Yen thought. He didn't expect that with Li Kuang's fierce personality, he would pick flowers for his beloved concubine. That's right. Yi Luo nodded vigorously, as if she was afraid that He Yen didn't believe her. He picked them for me this morning. I made a garland of flowers while I was at it. He Yan's smile froze. Today? That's right. Yi Luo smiled. Recently, Master has been very good to me. She even forgot to say, this concubine. She only cared about sharing her joy with He Yen. He promised that when the battle in the runda was over, he would give me a bigger house to live in. He also allowed me to plant plum blossom trees in the courtyard. Yesterday, he even saved some of his dried food for me to eat. As she spoke, Yi Luo's face became confused. Could it be that I've become prettier recently? Or is it because my deceased mother is protecting me from the heavens? Master is so obedient to me that I almost don't recognize him. He Yan's heart sank. That terrifying guess appeared in his mind again. He asked Yi Luo, other than this, has Lordly been acting strangely recently? No. Yi Luo shook her head. Then, she complained to He Yen, however, Xiao He Darren, how can you say that he's acting strangely when he treats me well? Master was also very good to me in the past. Now, he's just treating me better. It's probably a friend in need is a friend indeed. Now that I'm accompanying Master, Master must be moved. He Yen frowned and stepped forward. Miss Yi Luo, it's best that you avoid Lordly for the next few days. Why? Yi Luo asked curiously. He Yen looked at her. The beautiful girl had grown up a lot. Her smile always carried a bit of fox-like craftiness. This made her look smart and quick-witted. She was very lovable, but her eyes still revealed her innocence. A charming beauty, a weak and powerless woman. Perhaps. Lordly will hurt you. He Yen said in a low voice. Yi Luo was stunned for a moment. Then, she laughed. Xiao He Darren, what do you mean? Master dotes on me too much. Why would he hurt me? He Yen knew that she didn't believe him. In fact, women always thought that men were particularly affectionate. Little did they know that there was a prerequisite for that kind of affection. In times of peace and prosperity, a girl is naturally worthy of being doted on. He Yan's voice lowered. It was so low that almost no one could hear the pain in her voice. But in times of chaos, human lives are like grass. To Lord Li, a girl is more important than a city in Rundu. Yi Luo, I still don't understand. It's okay if you don't understand. He Yan looked up at her. Lord Li is very busy all day. You shouldn't be alone with him for the next few days. When you have nothing to do during the day, you can go to other places. You can go find Lord Zhao or other people. In short, if you don't have to see Lord Li, then don't see Lord Li. Yi Luo looked at her strangely. This young Muan Lang's words were simply inexplicable. Why would someone advise her to distance herself from her master? If she didn't know that He Yan had led his elite troops to attack the enemy's camp a few days ago and saved those captured women, Yi Luo would have suspected that this person was a bad person. She said, Xiao He Darren, I am Master's concubine. It's impossible for me to not see Master. Wait until the battle in Rundu is over. You can see her however you want. But for now, stay away from her. The young man's eyes were very clear and very dark. When he stared at someone, it was very powerful. Yi Luo subconsciously nodded, but then she shook her head. He Yan also hesitated. She was now Muan Lang. No matter how suspicious and worried she was about Yi Luo, she couldn't keep someone else's concubine by her side. If she really did that, she was afraid that Li Kuang would feel that she had become the second Jiang Jiao. He might really kill Yi Luo. She said, Go and find Lord Zhao's wife. You can stay with her during the day. If Lord Li suddenly wants to see you, you can ask someone to tell me. I will go with you. Yi Luo was a little suspicious, but He Yan was very insistent. In the end, she still agreed. After repeatedly reminding her, He Yan went to find Wang Ba and the others. On the night of the night attack, Wang Ba and the others were injured along with her. Shi Tu and Jiang Jiao were fine. Wang Ba's leg was injured, but it wasn't too serious. Huang Xiong's wound was a little deeper. The wound on his left hand was very deep. Fortunately, it wasn't his right hand. Otherwise, he might not be able to hold a sword in the future. No matter what, they were still taking care of him. When they arrived at the house, Hong Shan and Huang Xiong were sleeping. Shi Tu and Xiaomai had gone to help repair the weapons and shields. Only Jiang Jiao and Wang Ba were sitting by the door. When they saw He Yan, the two of them raised their heads. Jiang Jiao said, Brother He, how is it? He Yan shook her head. Wang Ba was furious. What's wrong with that surnamed Li? He looks tall and strong, but why is he so timid? Has he been hiding in the city like a coward? I've been starving for the past few days. If this goes on, we'll all starve to death. We'll still be hungry ghosts when we go to hell. It's better to die while killing Yuto. Jiang Jiao said, Lord Li is also afraid that the city will be destroyed and the people will be buried with him. It's just that. He looked at He Yan. I've asked the soldiers here. They've run out of food. These days, we've been relying on the dry rations we brought from Liangzhou. Even this little bit of dry rations was eaten yesterday. We haven't eaten anything since yesterday. We can't go on like this. That's right. In Rundu, even the rats have been dug out and eaten. There's not even a worm to be seen. Does he want us to eat the table? What is Li Kuang thinking? If we had known earlier, we wouldn't have been able to take the excess with us the day we burned the rations. We could have just grabbed a handful and carried it with us. It would have been enough to last us half a day. Jiang Jiao was both amused and angry. At that time, how could we care so much? Brother He looked at He Yan. Don't you have any other ideas? The Yudo's rations have been burned, but they're outside the city. They can still hunt and won't starve to death. He Yan was deeply worried. If we're talking about who can last longer, the Runda's people definitely won't be able to last longer than the Yuto. Therefore, Li Kuang's idea is definitely impossible. Now that he doesn't agree to go out of the city and confront the Yuto, I can't order the Runda's troops. I can only ask for external help, but... However, she was afraid that before that day came, the Runda would be in chaos. Li Kuang's attitude these days was very wrong. She sighed and didn't say anything else. On the other side, Yi Luo went to find Madame Zhao. Although He Yan's behavior was strange, Yi Luo always felt an indescribable sense of closeness towards He Yan. Therefore, although she didn't believe He Yan's words at all, she was still willing to do as He Yan said. Now that Li Kuang was very busy every day, he didn't have time to take care of her. She could go anywhere she wanted during the day, she had more freedom than before. Madame Zhao was holding her little grandson with a worried expression. Her daughter-in-law was seriously ill in bed. The doctor came several times, but it was useless. Everyone knew that this was an illness caused by starvation. Without food, of course, her body couldn't recover well. Madame Zhao was also hungry to the point of losing her shape. She was a good county magistrate's wife, but now her clothes were a lot bigger. Her exposed arms were so thin and weak that it seemed like they could be broken with a little force. Beautiful Silk thought to herself. In the past, the delicate young ladies in the city would complain about eating less every day. They looked thin and weak, which made people want to take pity on them. She was afraid that after the war, no one would think so anymore. The taste of hunger was really unbearable. A flower needed to drink enough dew before it could bloom for others to see. Madame Zhao only said a few words to Yi Luo before she closed her mouth. She looked listless. At this time, she was so hungry that she didn't even want to talk. Yi Luo sat with her for a while. Then, a soldier came over and said to Yi Luo, "Miss Yi Luo, the Lord is looking for you." "Looking for me?" Yi Luo was a little surprised. Li Kuang was busy with the Runda war. If she didn't take the initiative to look for Li Kuang definitely wouldn't take the initiative to look for her. However, thinking about how Li Kuang doted on her these few days, Yi Luo's heart was suddenly filled with joy. The only good thing about the Runda war was that Li Kuang saw her loyalty. Perhaps this doting could last for more than 3 years. It was very possible that it could last for 10 years. At this moment, she was only filled with the joy of fantasizing in her mind. He Yan's advice had long been thrown to the back of her mind. She happily lifted the corner of her skirt and said with a smile, "Okay, I'll go see the Lord now." Yi Luo followed the soldier into the house. Li Kuang wasn't alone in the house. Li Kuang's deputy soldiers and several officials in the Runda city were also sitting in the house. There were also a few confidants of Li Kuang. Yi Luo felt a little strange. She originally thought that Li Kuang missed her and wanted to be affectionate with her. However, with so many people, it didn't seem like he wanted to be affectionate. Perhaps some important person was coming. She, the most beautiful girl in the Rundu, was going to fight for Li Kuang's face? But this didn't seem right. If there was an important person, why wasn't the county magistrate Zhao Shiming here? She walked forward and said, "Lord." Li Kuang's back was facing her. When he heard her voice, he turned around. These days, he was haggard and looked a lot older. When he stood next to Yi Luo, he really looked like Yi Luo's father. In the past, the famous general of Dewei, General Fei Hong, also teased her like this. However, Yi Luo didn't think much of it. Her own father had passed away early. Li Kuang gave her food, a house to live in, and shelter. There were many biological fathers in the world who couldn't do this for their daughters. Moreover, Li Kuang was a hero who protected the people. She admired him and never felt that there was anything bad about him. At this moment, her husband looked up at Yi Luo. There was a deep meaning in his eyes that she couldn't understand. It seemed to be deep pain, but it also seemed to be mixed with coldness. After looking at her for a long time, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Yi Luo, how long have you been following me? Yi Luo tilted her head and thought for a moment, replying to Lord, this concubine has been following you for more than 3 years. After this summer, it will be 4 years. Li Kuang doted on her very much, so he took her with him everywhere he went. His wife and son were both in Shuajing, and they still had to take care of their parents. It was impossible for them to follow him to the bitter cold of the border. However, Yi Luo, who looked young and beautiful, had been following him for many years without any complaints. In his life, he was straightforward. He didn't like women who schemed against each other. Yi Luo had some harmless schemes, but more than that, it was a kind of pure passion. She was easily satisfied. She always had the word, fight for favor, written clearly on her face. She was very polite in her dealings with people. His colleagues all envied him for having such an understanding flower. In fact, Yi Luo had never really enjoyed anything. As his beloved concubine, Yi Luo's life couldn't be compared to the other women in the capital. Li Kuang muttered, "It's been 4 years," his tone was heavy. Yi Luo inexplicably felt a little scared. She tilted her head to look at the people around her. The soldiers who were familiar with her in the past all turned their heads to avoid her gaze. Why was this? No matter how smart she was, she couldn't understand the reason behind this. She stared at Li Kuang with her grape-like eyes full of confusion. Li Kuang's eyes flashed with pain. After a moment, he said, "Come here." Yi Luo obeyed and went forward. He Yan talked with Jiang Jiao and the others for a while. Shi Tu and Hong Shan also woke up. Xiao Mai and Shi Tu helped to repair the weapons. When they returned to the room and saw He Yan, they asked, He Gu, aren't you going to find Lord Li today? I've already looked for him. He Yan shrugged. Jiang Jiao thought for a moment. Why don't we go with you to find Lord Li? Let's persuade him together. He Yan actually felt that Jiang Jiao's move wouldn't have much effect. Li Kuang's attitude was too firm. But since it had already come to this, he might as well give a Hail Mary a try. He got up and said, "Okay, we can try again." Back then, Lu Buwang took her as his disciple because he was annoyed to death by her. Li Kuang's patience was not as good as Lu Buwang's, so he might be able to do the same. However, the result of this was very likely that Li Kuang would draw his sword against her. He Yan took the group to find Li Kuang again. On the way, they passed by Zhao Shiming's courtyard and saw Zhao Shiming's wife sitting at the door in a daze with her little grandson in her arms. He Yan was stunned and went forward to ask, "Mrs. Zhao, did you see Miss Yi Luo?" Before she left, she had clearly told Yi Luo that she would ask Yi Luo to find Mrs. Zhao. Why did it seem that Mrs. Zhao was alone now? Mrs. Zhao didn't seem to understand He Yan's words. After a while, she replied, she was called away by the commander. He Yan's heart skipped a beat. Without saying anything, he immediately ran to Li Kuang's courtyard. Behind him, Wang Ba and the others didn't understand. Wang Ba asked, "Why is he so nervous? Does he have an affair with that woman?" Hong Shan said, "Don't talk nonsense. He just arrived in the Runda not long ago." "But he can still attract bees and butterflies," Wang Ba muttered. He Yan ran to Li Kuang's courtyard in one breath. Today, there were soldiers guarding in front of Li Kuang's house. She was shocked and was about to rush in when she was stopped by the soldiers at the door. "What are you doing?" "The commander has ordered that no one is allowed to enter." He Yan stared at his eyes. What is he doing inside? Her gaze was as cold as an ice knife. The soldiers were frightened by her. Before they could speak, Zhao Shiming also came over. Seeing this scene, he frowned and said, "Why are you quarreling again?" "This is Xiao He. Get out of the way." The two soldiers seemed to come back to their senses. They looked at He Yan again and said firmly, "The commander has ordered that no one is allowed to enter." Muan Lang is the same. He Yan said, "Get lost." She took the sword from one of the soldiers' waist. The two soldiers tried to stop her, but how could they stop her? He Yan slapped the two of them to the ground. Then, She kicked the door open and strode in. As soon as she entered, she was stunned. Other than Li Kuang, there were many deputies and soldiers in the room. There was also a group of women kneeling beside the chairs. These women were dressed neatly. Some of them had tear stains on their faces, while others looked calm. However, He Yen still remembered one or two of their faces. They were the Dewey prisoners she rescued from Yuto during the night of the sneak attack on the enemy camp. In the middle of the room, there was a woman lying on the ground. The woman's body was covered by a white cloth. She couldn't see who she was, but she was holding a small and exquisite flower garland in her hand. He Yan's eyes immediately turned red. Chapter 178. The room was silent for a moment, then Li Kuang's angry voice sounded, "Who let you in?" He Yan raised her head and glared at him, trying to suppress her trembling voice. "You killed her. This is my family's business, what does it have to do with you?" Li Kuang seemed to not want to see her. "Get out." Some of the soldiers around couldn't bear to look at He Yan, some avoided her gaze, and some bowed their heads in silence. No one said a word. "Why should I get out?" He Yan said coldly, "Even if Yi Luo is your family's business, these women were saved by me from Yuto. This shouldn't be your family's business, Lord Li." She suddenly raised her voice. "Are you going to kill them all?" When the women on the ground heard this, some of them started to sob quietly. Zhao Shiming, who rushed over after hearing the news, finally rushed in with Wang Ba and the others. When he saw the corpse in the room, he was shocked. Zhao Shiming asked with trembling hands, "What's going on? What happened? Who is this person?" He Yan took a step forward, and Li Kuang said angrily, "Don't touch her." The next moment, the white cloth was removed. The girl on the ground was bleeding from her chest, and her clothes were dyed red. She was lying on the ground with a calm expression, like a beautiful flower. A few hours ago, she was still smiling and showing He Yan the garland she made, and telling others about her future. Now, she didn't cry or smile, and was just a cold corpse. "Yi Luo?" Zhao Shiming was shocked. "How can Yi Luo be here? Did Yuto sneak in? Lord Li? What's going on?" If Yuto really sneaked in, how could Li Kuang be so calm, and the Rundu would be in chaos? But, how could he explain the scene before him? Li Kuang stared at He Yan, but He Yan remained unmoved. He looked at him and said word by word, "You'll have to ask the Lord Li about this. I think the Lord Li is trying to imitate Zhang Sun of the previous dynasty." As soon as he said this, Zhao Shiming gasped. Among Wang Ba and Shi Tu's group, only Jiang Jiao had studied before. The others did not understand what He Yan meant. Only Jiang Jiao's expression changed slightly. In the previous dynasty, Zhang Sun guarded Suiyang city. When the city ran out of grain, he killed his concubines to feed the soldiers. What is the Lord Li doing? You want to be Dewey's Zhang Sun, but there are other ways to make a living in Rundu. Why do you have to do this? What do you know? Li Kuang couldn't help but scold her, "You're just a woman. If I can save the people of the city, I won't regret even if I die. She's just a woman. Dying for Rundu is not a pity at all." He Yan looked at him. Li Kuang had fought the enemy side by side with her, and they had gone through life and death together. Although she and Li Kuang were not close friends, they could be considered old friends. He Yan had never doubted Li Kuang's character. As a military leader, he was upright, brave, and loyal. However, in the eyes of the world, he was a hero. In his eyes, women were just like cats and dogs. They were animals. They were nothing more than sacrificial lambs. His favorite concubine could be killed in the blink of an eye for the sake of righteousness and become food to fill his stomach. This was even more terrifying than swapping children for food. She had thought that this might happen, but that was the matter of the previous dynasty. Now it had not reached such a desperate situation, and Li Kuang was not Zhang Sun. He Yan still had hope. She thought that perhaps she had thought too much of human nature. But, nothing could stop it. Li Kuang still made the same choice. When he was reading the biography of Zhong Yi in the Xianchangguan, Zhang Sun lost Suiyang. The enemy could not break the city, so they camped outside the city and waited for the soldiers and horses in the city to starve to death. There was no food in the city. Zhang Sun killed his beloved concubine and forced the soldiers to eat her. Then someone killed the servants to make food for the army. The women in the city died, and the men took over. The number of people eaten was 20 to 30,000. None of the young people in the hall made a sound. The atmosphere was quiet. The teacher was still reading. Before the war, there were 40,000 people in Suiyang. When the city was broken, only 400 people survived. They were all young people in their teens, and they all came from rich and high-ranking officials. They had never heard of such a tragic thing. Cannibalism was already shocking enough. If a war was added, it would be even more shocking. The teacher asked, "Do you think what Zhang Sun did was right or wrong?" The young people spoke enthusiastically and each made their own statements. In the end, they still thought that Zhang Sun's actions at that time were understandable. The teacher said, "Killing people is against human nature." But it was not Zhang Sun's original intention. There is a saying, the crime of Tsang Huang is light, but the merit of revival is heavy. The cannibalism is too small, but the merit of defending the city is too great. The young people nodded in agreement. They all thought that although it was tragic, it was precisely this incident that reflected Zhang Sun's loyalty. After all, the concubine was a family matter, but defending the city was a national matter. Zhang Sun was a loyal minister who sacrificed his concubine to defend the country. He Yan did not think so at that time. She sat in the hall and did not speak. She also did not agree with the young people's opinions. She only frowned and looked solemn. The teacher saw that she did not agree and called her up with a smile. He asked, "He Rufei, do you have a different opinion?" At that time, she was still an idiot who was at the bottom of the exam in Xianchang Dojo. When her name was called, she felt a little uneasy. However, the anger in her heart could not be appeased. She finally gathered her courage and said, "Everyone says that Zhang Sun is a loyal minister and a righteous man. It is indeed true. But aren't those people who were eaten innocent? I can understand his choice, but if it were me, I would definitely not do that." "Oh. What do you think?" the teacher asked with a smile. "I will lead the remaining soldiers and fight to the death with the rebel army outside the city." The young girl stood in the hall. The sunlight shone through the window and fell on her face. Her delicate and slightly childish face was covered with a layer of determination. The person who holds the sword in his hand should know where the tip of the sword is pointed. Whether it is the enemy in front of him or the weak behind him. I will never draw my sword against the weak. The hall was silent for a moment. Then, the laughter of the young people rang out. "Weak? What weak? He himself is a weak person. Also, brother He's swordsmanship is so bad. How can he hold a sword? I'm afraid you're not dreaming. What you said is so powerful. How is that possible? If such a bad knife and horse can be sent to defend the city, I think there is no need to defend the city." Ha ha ha. He Yan was surrounded by laughter and her face flushed red. She pursed her lips and thought, 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west, maybe one day, she would be a general galloping on the battlefield. At that time, she would definitely protect the people she wanted to protect. She would never let the unarmed common people become food for the army. If she wanted to do something, she would be the bravest general. The teacher calmed down the young people who were laughing at her. He looked at He Yan with gratification in his eyes. "You can think from the perspective of the common people. It shows that you have a heart of compassion for the weak. This is very good." He Yan sighed in her heart. It was not that she had a heart of compassion for the weak. It was because the young people who were laughing in the hall were all men. Naturally, they thought of her as Zhang Sun. And she was a woman. Naturally, she stood in the position of beloved concubine. From the standpoint of Zhang Sun, this action was very righteous. From the standpoint of beloved concubine, this was just an undeserved disaster. The joys and sorrows of people in the world could not be interconnected at all times. It was nothing more than a choice made based on one's position. Just like this moment. He Yan said, "You are a loyal subject. What crime have you committed?" "You don't need to say so much to me," Li Kuang said coldly. "Yi Luo is my concubine. She is my person. How I deal with my people is my business. As for these women, ask them if they were willing. I did not force them." He Yan looked at the women sitting on the floor. One of the women's eyes were red. She kowtowed to He Yan and said softly, "Thank you, Darren, for planning for us. It's just that, we have already been defiled by the Yuto. Our bodies are no longer clean. Since we cannot go home, we also do not have the face to live in this world. Now that we can use our bodies to fight for a chance to live for the Rundu, it is our good fortune. Perhaps this merit can help us wash away the mud on our bodies and accumulate good fortune in the future." "What merit?" Before she could say anything, He Yan interrupted her. Wang Ba and the others looked at He Yan in surprise. All along, He Yan's temperament was very gentle. Even when Wang Ba provoked her in the past, she did not say a single word of profanity. Now that she was cursing, it was obvious that she was very angry. "What do you mean by, our bodies are no longer clean? What do you mean by, no face to live in this world?" He Yan said angrily. "Is this your fault?" She looked at Li Kuang and the soldiers in the room with their heads bowed. "Is this their fault? If you think that this is doing merit, then you are gravely mistaken." "Lord Li," she turned to look at Li Kuang. "You are the city's chief soldier. Let me tell you, these women were captured by the Yuto because the Yuto are cruel and because you are not capable. What wrong did they do? I have never seen an injured person in the wrong, and the person who harmed them is relieved. You are doing exactly what the Yuto want. In their eyes, the people of Dawei are all fools. They only care about doing evil, so naturally, there will be innocent people to bear the blame for them. How can there be such a ridiculous thing in this world? If being touched by the Yuto means that they are not clean, then from the moment they stepped into Dawei's land, there is no need to fight against them. Dawei's land is also not clean. Just give it to them. What's the point of fighting? You. Be careful with your words." Li Kuang suppressed his anger. "I won't." He Yan stared at him. There seemed to be a ball of fire in her eyes that wanted to burn everything around her. "You are a man. You are their general. You pointed your knife at your women and your people. What is this? If you follow me today to kill a few Yuto and eat Yuto's meat and drink their blood, I will respect you as men. But there is no such thing in this world. Men can't win a battle, so they ask innocent and weak women to sacrifice themselves. This is called cowardice. I said before, they are willing. Are they really willing?" He Yan's gaze was sharp. "Okay, let me ask you." She looked at the women. "Why do you think you can't live? Is it because of what others say? If others say something, you will refute them. If you are not good with words, you will use your fists. Is this your fault? If they still use this to humiliate you, then they are the most despicable and shameless people. There is no need to show them any mercy. I saved your lives. If you give them up so easily, where do you put me?" Her expression was frightening. The women did not dare to speak. After a while, one of the young women burst into tears. She sobbed, "I don't want to die. I'm scared." Li Kuang's face was ashen. "If you don't want to die, I am here. No one can force you to die." "How dare you say this?" Li Kuang said. "This is not the Yangzhou Guard." He Yan's expression calmed. She stepped forward and shielded the women behind her. "Lord Li, Yi Luo is your concubine. She has been with you for many years. She is not an item that can be casually given away. She is yours, but before that, she is a person. Today, you cannot touch these women. If you want to, He Yen slowly pulled out the long sword she had taken from the soldiers at the door. You have to go through my sword first. You think I don't dare? Li Kuang was furious. He pulled out the long sword at his waist. When the surrounding soldiers saw this, they all pulled out their swords and pointed them at He Yen. The room was filled with a tense atmosphere. Zhao Shiming said anxiously, "What's wrong with you? Why are our own people fighting with our own people? Our top priority is to defeat those Yudo." Lord Li, I think Xiao He Darren is right. You can't eat people. If you do this, the people outside will follow suit. What will happen to Rundu city then? Even if we manage to defend the city, do you want the people of the world to point at our backs and curse us? He also had his own selfish motives. Yi Luo was Li Kuang's most beloved concubine. Zhao Shiming had to admit that Yi Luo was beautiful and intelligent. She was very lovable. If it was him, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. However, Li Kuang could kill her without any hesitation. These martial artists, sigh. In the end, as officials, wouldn't they all have to set an example? At his age, he hadn't even killed a chicken in his life. If he had to send his family to their deaths, Zhao Shiming would rather die himself. Thus, he immediately stood on He Yan's side. Li Kuang didn't care about Zhao Shiming. He didn't care about a county magistrate who didn't even know how to wield a sword. What made him angry was He Yan. No one would have thought that He Yan would barge in so rashly and criticize him without any explanation. Yi Luo had been with him for many years. Didn't his heart ache? Didn't he hesitate when he killed her? However, the battle had already reached this point. If the Rundu couldn't be defended, everyone would die. Killing Yi Luo in front of these deputy generals also made them understand their determination to defend the Rundu. Among these deputy generals, they had met Yi Luo many times. They couldn't bear to see a living girl killed in front of them. There were also people who pleaded for Yi Luo. However, Li Kuang thought that he would do what Zhang Sun did in the past. It didn't matter even if he had to bear the curse of the world. His merits and demerits would be judged by future generations. However, this Muan Lang, He Yan, barged in and stood in front of him to protect those women. His gaze was so bright that it made him feel ashamed. He suddenly thought of He Rufei. General Fei Hong, who was still a deputy general, would try his best to save the women who were captured by the enemy in every battle. In fact, when these women returned home, what awaited them was not good. However, He Rufei would always patiently comfort them and encourage them. Li Kuang had never seen a man who was so considerate. However, he thought that General Fei Hong was the only one in the world who was so naive. However, another one appeared in front of him today. Li Kuang's expression was cold. Muan Lang, are you going to fight with me? I'm sorry, but I can't let them die here. A woman on the side cried and looked at He Yan. Sir, don't waste your energy on us. If our lives can be exchanged for the safety of the Rundu, we are willing. The safety of the Rundu cannot be exchanged for by you. He Yan said coldly. Sacrificing women for safety is no different from begging for mercy from the enemy. Lord Li, this is not the previous dynasty, and you are not Zhang Sun. Li Kuang was almost angry. He knew that every word of the young man in front of him was correct, but he had no other choice. You want to fight with me? He said coldly. What the hell is this? Wang Ba spat on the ground. You think it's reasonable to kill a woman? We bandits don't kill women, the elderly, or children. As the saying goes, even bandits have morals. You soldiers who live off the imperial grain are worse than animals. Don't waste time. We, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th of the Liang Province Guards, accept your challenge. He spoke as if he was fighting in a martial arts arena. Li Kuang was so angry that his expression became even uglier. At this time, another person walked in. It was Chu Zhao. He looked at Li Kuang and bowed. Then, he smiled and said, Lord Li, this is not appropriate. His Majesty has always promoted benevolent governance. If word of cannibalism reaches His Majesty's ears, I'm afraid His Majesty will not be happy. He was going to stand on He Yan's side. Chu Zhao represented Prime Minister Su. One was a Liang province guard, and the other was Prime Minister Su. The pressure was unimaginable. Li Kuang was angry and annoyed. Who was this He Yan? Why were they following him like this? However, the soldiers around him were all looking at him. He gritted his teeth and said, You are not my opponent. He Yan smiled and held his sword horizontally in front of him. Lord Li, why don't you try? The tip of the sword was cold and the air was cold. The gunpowder in the room was about to explode. At this time, a soldier's voice suddenly came from outside. Sir! Sir! Li Kuang was filled with anger. He couldn't go up or down. Hearing this, he said angrily, What are you shouting for? In the next moment, the door to the room was opened again. Someone walked in with a calm voice. Lord Li, before you teach the Liang province guards a lesson, you should ask me first. This voice. He Yan was startled. He quickly turned his head. He saw a young man dressed in dark clothes with narrow sleeves and dark armor walk forward and stand in front of him. They hadn't seen each other for a month, but the last time they met felt like 10,000 years. His appearance was handsome, and his figure was like a spring willow. His expression was as cold as ever. Military Governor Xiao. Li Kuang couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. He didn't expect to see Xiao Ju, the commander-in-chief of the Right Army, here. Xiao Ju didn't look at He Yan or Li Kuang. His gaze swept past the crying women. He said calmly, The person holding the sword should know where the tip of the sword is pointed. Whether it is pointed at the enemy in front of him or the weak behind him. You shouldn't point your sword at the weak. He Yan suddenly looked up. Chapter 179. His eyes were cold and his voice was calm, but in that instant, He Yan was brought back to that afternoon in the Xiancheng dojo. His voice overlapped with the young boy's voice, making it impossible to tell who it was. From outside came a soldier's shout. He was excited and joyful, Sir. Lord. Reinforcements are here. Reinforcements are here. Reinforcements? He Yan looked at Xiao Ju's back, he brought the Nanfu army. How is this possible? Just as he heard this, Li Kuang pushed aside the people in front of him and rushed out of the room. He Yan looked at Xiao Ju and also rushed out. Outside the city, there were shouts of killing. He Yan climbed up the city tower and looked down with Li Kuang. On the plains, Yudo and Dewei's troops were fighting, the word, Yan, was written on the war flag. There was a young man sitting on the horse in the lead. His hair was tied up high, and he had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. He wore silver armor and held a halberd in his hand. He looked particularly high-spirited as he led his men to fight. Yan He. He Yan smiled. Li Kuang, who had rushed over, saw this scene and was also excited. He immediately ordered the troops in the city, Follow me out to fight Yudo. Li Kuang did not expect the reinforcements to arrive, and neither did Wyatt. The day before they decided to attack the city, they were caught off guard by the troops brought by Lieutenant General Yan He. Li Kuang led the Rundu troops to join the battle, and the Utho troops were forced to retreat. Their leader, Huyate, abandoned his troops and fled. The rest of the Utho soldiers were scattered like scattered sand. A portion of them were captured by Li Kuang, while the rest retreated south of Rundu with Huyate. Don't chase a cornered enemy. Yan He stopped Li Kuang from chasing after them. He wiped off the Wudong blood on his armor and casually tossed his handkerchief to a servant beside him. He mocked, With just these few Wudong soldiers, you don't even dare to come out of the city? Too cowardly. These words were not pleasant to hear, and it was said by a kid who was much younger than him. Li Kuang was not angry. If Yan He had not brought reinforcements, the Yuto would not have retreated so quickly. He was truly grateful to Yan He. This was out of his expectations. Who knew that General Fei Hong, who had been waiting bitterly, did not come, but Lieutenant General Guida came. I thank Generals Yan on behalf of the people of the city, the Rundu will never forget your help. However, he hesitated, why did Generals Yan come to the Rundu? He had never written a letter to Yan He. Yan He snorted and laughed. He carried the Fangtian halberd on his back and walked forward casually. Let's talk inside. The soldiers cleaned up the battlefield outside until late at night. Everyone clapped their hands in celebration of this great victory. Not only that, Yan He had not only brought reinforcements, he had also brought food. The soldiers set up a large pot in the city and used the food they brought to cook porridge. The people of the Rundu who were still alive carried bowls of porridge with gratitude. The fragrance of the rice floated in the air of the Rundu city and did not dissipate for a long time. Inside the house, Zhao Shiming was rubbing his hands nervously as he looked at the two people sitting on the table. One was the Right Army Commander Xiao Huijin, the other was Guide Lieutenant General Yan He. He was just a county magistrate of the Rundu, how could he meet such important people in his life? He could be considered lucky. However, one of them was cold, while the other was arrogant. Both of them did not seem easy to get close to. Zhao Shiming did not know what to say other than thanking them repeatedly for saving the people of the Rundu. At this moment, Zhao Shiming sighed in his heart. If only Yi Luo was still here. It would be much better to interact with a smart beauty than these old men. In the past, Yi Luo would always be the one to smooth things over. Li Kuang probably thought of this as well. His expression was a little stiff. Yan He, the Lieutenant General of Guida, was only in his early 20s. He was very young and could be considered handsome. However, his gaze always carried a hint of provocation. His chin was also slightly raised, as though he did not like to place people in his eyes. His hair was tied up very high, and his ponytail fell behind his head, showing the arrogance of a young man. In comparison, the Right Army Commander Xiao Ju, who was sitting beside him, was as calm as autumn water. After taking off his armor, he looked more like a noble young master sitting in a winery in the capital. He was not as arrogant as Yan He, but his calm and indifferent expression was also emitting an aura that kept people 1,000 miles away. Zhao Shiming wiped his sweat. What should he say? He couldn't afford to offend these two great gods. Before he could think of what to say, Li Kuang spoke first. Li Kuang hesitated for a moment and asked Yan He, Generals Yan, why did you suddenly come to help the Rundu? Yan He laughed softly and sat up straight. He said, I haven't asked you yet. Is there a person called He Yan in the Rundu? When he said this, everyone in the room had different expressions. Xiao Ju's gaze moved slightly, but he did not say anything. Seems like there is, Yan He said, Lord Li, call that person over, I want to meet him. He Yan was waiting outside the room. Sure enough, not long after, someone came out and said, Lord Xiao He, Generals Yan invites you in. Wang Ba was stunned. What's going on? He's asking you to go in alone. Is he going to punish me later? Why don't we go with you? Jiang Jiao was also slightly hesitant. You left the Liangzhou guards this time. If military governor Xiao issues a military order to punish you, it's not because of that. He Yan looked at the door and shook his head. Don't worry, nothing will happen. She patted Jiang Jiao's shoulder and turned around to walk into Li Kuang's room alone. Everyone in the room followed He Yan in and their gazes landed on her. The young man in silver armor looked at He Yan and sized up He Yan. He said, You are He Yan? Yes. He Yan stood up from his chair and looked down at He Yan. He was a head taller than He Yan. He used his hand to measure the height of He Yan's head. He clicked his tongue and asked Xiao Ju seriously, There are still people this short in the military camp? He Yan was speechless. He retracted his hand and rubbed his chin as he sized up He Yan. You're not tall, but you're quite brave. You're the one who wrote the letter asking for help and asked me to come to the Rundu. As soon as he said this, Li Kuang looked at He Yan. Xiao Ju's gaze also landed on He Yan. He Yan calmly accepted everyone's different expressions. Yes. Then you have good taste, Yan, he said disapprovingly. You didn't ask He Rufei, that useless person in front of you. Instead, you asked me to come and help the Rundu. It seems like you know very well that I am more reliable than He Rufei. He Yan didn't say anything. How could he say anything? If he followed his words, he would also step on himself and deny what he said. He Yan was actually quite happy to hear people scold He Rufei like this. That day, she and Li Kuang parted on bad terms. After she noticed that the Rundu's situation was not good, she borrowed a few people from Zhao Shiming and went to ask for help from Yan He in Ling County. She still remembered that Yan He led the troops to guard Ling County. It was not as close as Hua Yuan. In fact, Yan He's reputation was not as good as He Rufei's. If a normal person asked for help, the first person they would think of would be He Rufei and not Yan He. However, He Yan knew that He Rufei would not come at all. That was why she took a step back and asked for the next best thing. It was not easy to mobilize the troops in Jinling. In comparison, Yan He had a lot more freedom. However, Yan He might not come at all. Therefore, in the letter, other than writing about the critical situation in the Rundu, she also wrote about He Rufei's despicable actions of not helping when he saw someone in need. The words you scolded He Rufei in the letter made me feel very comfortable. He Yan looked at He Yan. You really know how I feel. He Yan thought, how could she not know? As her classmate, this person in front of her bullied her a lot during those years in the Xianchang dojo. It was Yan He and a few other youths who would cause trouble for her every now and then. They would either tease her or bully her. Seeing this person, she could almost see the dark days in the Xianchang dojo. Yan He hated her. He started to hate her when they were classmates in the Xianchang dojo. After so many years, he still stubbornly hated her. In order to please him, He Yan wrote a lot of bad things about He Rufei in the letter. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Looking at it now, it was true. Because He Yan insulted He Rufei, Yan He naturally turned He Yan into his own camp. Even though you are short and thin, I think you are very smart. In the next moment, Yan He placed his hand on his shoulder. How about you follow me in the future? Yan Nangguang. Xiao Ju's gaze landed on his hand and reminded, she is a member of the Liang Province Guards. Liang Province Guards? He Yan retracted his hand and looked at He Yan. He asked in confusion, aren't you from the Rundu? Generals Yan, He Yan said, I was in the Liang Province Guards recruit camp before. Later, Her Majesty personally conferred the title of Muan Lang. I heard that the Rundu was in trouble and specially came to help the city. She emphasized the words, Muan Lang. Even though Xiao Ju classified her as a member of the Liang Province Guards, if she didn't want to implicate him, it was best to draw a clear line. You are a member of the Liang Province Guards and came to the Rundu yourself? Yan He glanced at Xiao Ju and then looked at He Yan. The relationship between them was too complicated and he couldn't understand it. He simply returned to his seat and leaned against the chair. He snorted and said, forget it, I don't want to know about your complicated internal affairs. However, this He, what is it again? He Yan was already used to this fellow's arrogance and reminded him, He Yan, I didn't come because of your letter asking for help. Even if I came, it wouldn't be so fast. Zhao Shiming asked cautiously, then may I ask why Generals Yan He laughed and looked at Xiao Ju provocatively. The commander-in-chief of the Right Army personally asked me for help. This is the first time in his life that he has asked me for help. I am so generous, so of course, I have to come and help. Isn't that right, Military Governor Xiao? Xiao Ju's expression was indifferent and she didn't pay attention to his words. He Yan was astonished. Yan He meant. Xiao Ju also asked Yan He for help. That's right, he didn't bring the southern prefecture soldiers here. After all, Liang Province wasn't as close as Ling County. She actually thought of the same thing as Xiaoju. In that case, even if she didn't write the letter asking for help, He would still come. Rundu City shouldn't be destroyed. Lord Li, County Magistrate Zhao. He played with his hair. Although this time it was this He and Military Governor Xiao who asked me for help, the one who led the troops here was me, He. You know very well where the credit goes this time. The victory of the Runda city this time was all thanks to Generals Yan. Zhao Shiming quickly said. As soon as he spoke, he realized that there was another person in the room. He immediately looked at Xiaoju. Seeing that the young man's expression was calm and there wasn't a trace of displeasure, he was relieved. Fortunately, this one person didn't care about the credit. If both of them came to snatch the credit, his small temple in Runda city wouldn't be able to accommodate two big Buddhas fighting. Yan had long heard about He's love for credit. However, this time the Runda city was defended because of He's help. It was understandable that he wanted the credit. He stretched lazily and yawned. I've been rushing for days and I've been playing Yuto the moment I arrived. I haven't had a chance to rest properly. I need to rest. I'll have to trouble everyone to prepare hot water for me. There's no need for food. I heard that the people here are so hungry that they're about to eat people. I don't have the hobby of eating people. Zhao Shiming repeatedly said yes and quickly ordered the servants to prepare the food for He. He stood up and was about to walk out. When he passed by Xiaoju, he stopped and looked at Xiaoju. He said in a conceited tone, whether you admit it or not, Xiao Huaijin, this time, I've won against you. After saying this, he seemed to be in a good mood. He placed his hands behind his head and swaggered out. Yan stared at his back. He was puzzled. To be honest, he didn't like Xiaoju back then and always went against Xiaoju. It was all because Xiaoju was better than him in both civil and military matters. After being in second place for a long time, he wanted to have a taste of being in first place. However, that first place just wouldn't drop no matter what. It was indeed annoying. However, even she, who was in last place, would always find fault with him. Yan didn't understand. How did she get in his way? The person who was fighting with her for last place was Lin Shuanghe, not He. Why was He so resentful towards her? This resentment had persisted for so many years. However, He's temperament was exactly the same as back then. He was competitive, obstinate, and self-opinionated. All his emotions were written on his face. As she was thinking about this, Xiaoju stood up and walked out. When she passed by her, she said coldly, "Come here." Yan, she sighed in her heart. She knew that this day would come sooner or later, but she didn't expect it to come so early. After all, who would have thought that Xiaoju would follow He to the Rundu? Jiang Jiao and the others waited patiently outside until Yan came out. When they saw her walking out with Xiaoju, they all looked serious. From the looks of it, they were going to settle scores in private. Hong Shan gestured to her to ask if they needed to go and plead for leniency. Yan shook her head slightly. This wasn't something that could be brushed off with one or two pleas. The room darkened. Only the light from the oil lamp on the table shone on the wall, casting shadows on the walls. The room that Zhao Shiming arranged for Xiaoju could be considered luxurious. Yan followed him in and buried her head. She was thinking about how to smooth things over when the person in front of her suddenly stopped and turned around. She bumped into Xiaoju's chest. Yan took 2 steps back and stood still. She raised her head and saw the person in front of her looking down at her. Although he didn't say anything, it was a little scary. The air was so quiet that it felt cold even in the summer. Yan paused and coughed softly. Commander-in-Chief, he looked at the sword in Yan's hand. It was the sword that she snatched from Li Kuang's guards when she was trying to save the women who were captured. She forgot to return it to Li Kuang. Yan's heart tightened. She put the sword on the table and explained, "This is someone else's sword." Xiao Ju took a step forward. He Yan held his breath. He thought that she was going to denounce him. The next moment, his arm was grabbed and turned over. There was a knife wound on his palm. It wasn't deep. He had been holding it. The bleeding had stopped, but it looked a little scary. He Yan probably hurt his hand when he was fighting with Li Kuang's guards. The situation was critical and he didn't pay attention to it. If it wasn't for Xiao Ju's actions, he wouldn't have noticed it. He didn't say anything. He turned and walked to the side. He Yan didn't know what to do. He heard him say, "Come here." The handkerchief was soaked in hot water. When it covered his palm, it stung a little. It was more of an itch. It was as if a colorful butterfly had landed on his palm and slowly crawled over it, leaving behind a numbing shadow. He lowered his head and sprinkled the powder on He Yan's wound. His expression was focused and quiet. He Yan stared at him. The young man's eyelashes were thick and long. Under the light, his side profile was as handsome as a painting. He was silent, gentle, and calm. There was no condemnation or sarcasm as expected. He Yan inexplicably felt a sense of guilt. It was as if he had done something unforgivable and had wronged Xiao Ju. She mumbled, "Commander-in-Chief, actually I didn't follow fourth young Master Chu to the Rundu. It was a coincidence that Chu Xiao was here." However, in Xiao Ju's eyes, she might have misunderstood. Although she was determined to stay away from Xiao Ju to avoid bringing trouble to him, she didn't want him to misunderstand and think that she was on Chu Xiao's side. "I know." His voice was cold and emotionless. He Yan didn't know what to say for a moment. He Yan's movements were very gentle, even gentler than when he was applying the medicine on himself. Because he was very tall, he had to bend over slightly when applying the medicine. He Yan originally followed his gaze and looked at Xiao Ju's palm. As she looked, her gaze fell on Xiao Ju's face. No matter how many good words were used to describe him, she felt that something was missing. Just as she was lost in thought, Xiao Ju suddenly raised his head and met her gaze without warning. His dark eyes were glittering and clear as autumn water. She was caught red-handed and her ears turned red. However, she still had to maintain a calm expression. She pointed at her palm and said, "It's done." The wound didn't look as scary as before after the powder was sprinkled on it. He Yan retracted his hand and felt a little uneasy. This didn't seem to be Xiao Ju's style. If Xiao Ju was a normal person, she would have come over and asked him questions. However, she was so quiet today that He Yan didn't know where to start. Why did she change her personality? He Yan didn't understand. However, if Xiao Ju didn't ask, she didn't know what to say either. After he finished applying the medicine for He Yan, he sat down on a chair in the room. He didn't let He Yan leave, nor did he have any intention of asking her questions. After a while, He Yan couldn't help but ask, "Commander-in-Chief, why didn't you ask me why I left the Yangzhou guards and came to the Rundu without permission? You are the Muan Lang personally appointed by Her Majesty. You have the official seal and the official uniform. You can decide whether you want to stay or leave. You don't have to discuss it with me," Xiao Ju said calmly. "It's up to you whether you want to stay or leave." This was originally an excuse that He Yan had prepared for herself. She didn't expect that Xiao Ju would be one step ahead of her. This made He Yan unable to continue her words. "I forced Wang Ba and the others to come here. Please don't punish them. I will take responsibility for this matter. I don't have any bad intentions. I was just worried that the Runda would fall, so I overestimated myself and came to help. Forget it." Since Xiao Ju didn't want to speak, she would take responsibility for herself first. Her attitude was better when she admitted her mistake. "Why do you think," Xiao Ju said, "He Rufei won't help the Rundu?" In the end, he would still ask this question. He Yan sighed in his heart and looked at him. "If I say that He Rufei is not a good person, will you believe me?" Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently and raised the corner of her mouth. Evidence. I can't produce any evidence, and I can't convince you. However, in my opinion, He Rufei isn't the hero that people say he is. She said, He Rufei, instead of General Fei Hong. Commander-in-Chief. He Yan looked at him and slowly said, if one day, He Rufei and I have different standpoints and draw our swords against each other, which side will you stand on? She had wanted to ask this question for a long time. He Rufei and she would eventually have such a day. The He Rufei that Xiao Zhu knew was the He Rufei of the Xianchang Gymnasium, and the He Yan that Xiao Zhu knew was the current He Yan. Both of them were actually her, but how would Xiao Zhu choose? He Yan wasn't very sure. It seemed that every one of her had a good relationship with Xiao Zhu, but they weren't close friends. He Yan didn't know what she was like in Xiao Zhu's heart and what she meant to him, whether it was in the past or now. Xiao Zhu looked at her quietly. After a while, he said, it's very late today. You should go out. He didn't answer He Yan. He Yan didn't know if she was disappointed or glad. She was disappointed that Xiao Zhu didn't answer her directly, but she was glad that Xiao Zhu didn't deny her. She nodded. Yes. He Yan retreated, and the room once again quieted down. The young man's gaze fell on the wound medicine on the table. He lowered his beautiful eyes and no one knew what he was thinking. After a while, someone walked in. It was Fei Nu. He walked to Xiao Zhu and whispered, young master, Wan Ying's news came back. He Sui's problem hasn't been found yet. She's fine. Xiao Zhu interrupted him. Fei Nu was stunned. He Yan had many suspicious points. From the beginning until now, she didn't tell anyone. She brought a few new Yangzhou guards to the Rundu. No matter what, no one could give a reasonable explanation. She left with Chu Zhao one after the other. Now, she saw Chu Zhao again in the Rundu. Qi Wu and Fei Nu couldn't help but suspect that He Yan might be Chu Zhao's man. But they also felt that if she was Chu Zhao's man, her behavior was too arrogant and undisguised. The young man stood up. His shadow was long under the light. He looked at the light at the corner of the table thoughtfully. After a while, he said, tell Wanning that she doesn't need to investigate He Yan. Investigate He Rufei. Chapter 180. The Rundu city gradually regained its vitality. Yan He's troops not only chased away the Yuto, but they also brought back food. The food sent from Huayuan solved the Rundu's urgent needs. General Fei Hong is not in Huayuan. Li Kuang looked at Yan He in confusion. He already returned to Shuajing. How is that possible? Are you suspecting that I'm lying? Yan He frowned. No, Li Kuang said, it's just that, when the Rundu was surrounded by the Yudo, I immediately asked for General He's help. There were 3 groups of people, so it's impossible for there to be no news at all. I originally thought that he didn't come because the situation in Huayuan wasn't good, but, why did he return to Shuajing? You'll have to ask him. Yan He put his hands behind his head and leaned back in his chair. I'm not familiar with He Rufei. Li Kuang didn't say anything. While the two were silent, someone came in. It was Zhao Shiming. Zhao Shiming first looked at Yan He, then carefully said to Li Kuang, Commander, that Yi Luo is being buried today. When Li Kuang heard this, his expression became ugly. After a while, he stood up and said, let's go. Yi Luo wasn't actually from the Rundu, but her parents passed away early, so she didn't have any other relatives. It was summer, so they couldn't bring Yi Luo's body back to Shuajing, so they could only bury her here. She was buried in a deep forest in the Rundu city. The scenery was beautiful, and there was a large grape forest not far away. Yi Luo loved to eat grapes when she was alive, so she would probably be happy to be buried here. When they arrived, they didn't expect that Xiao Zhu and He Yan would also be there. Beside the two of them, there was a young man in white holding a folding fan. Xiao Zhu didn't mind, but when Li Kuang saw He Yan, he felt uncomfortable. That day, he and He Yan had almost drawn their swords in the hall. In the end, it was true that everything came to an abrupt end because of Xiao Ju's appearance. However, after the dust had settled, in the dead of the night, He Yan's words always lingered in his ears, smashing him until he couldn't sleep at night. On the bed next to him, when he turned his head, he could see Yi Luo's smiling face. However, when he opened his eyes, he couldn't grasp anything. He had not been able to become Zhang Sun, but he had also lost beautiful silk forever. This yen he yen he yen, yen yen he yen, yen he yen he yen yen, yen he yen he yen, yen he yen yen yen, yen he yen, yen yen he yen yen yen, yen yen he yen. He Yen didn't look at Li Kuang. In fact, Shi Yen didn't want to look at Li Kuang. She and Li Kuang had fought side by side. She knew that Li Kuang was loyal and righteous. However, because she was a woman, she always stood on Yi Luo's side. Therefore, she felt that the woman was innocent. The coffin was placed in the ground. Everything was settled. He Yen looked at the small stone tablet. What was ridiculous was that Yi Luo died at the hands of Li Kuang. However, the name on the tablet was that she was Li Kuang's wife. He Yen lowered her eyes and walked forward. She placed the small garland with purple flowers in her hand in front of the stone tablet. This girl once said to her that she hoped that she would still be Li Kuang's favorite concubine 10 years later. Life was unpredictable. Before 10 years had passed, she would no longer exist in this world. In a way, her wish seemed to have come true. Not only 10 years, Li Kuang wouldn't be able to forget Yi Luo for the rest of his life. Shi Yen didn't know if she was sad or sarcastic. However, she was already buried. It was useless to say anything. The crowd gradually dispersed. Perhaps Li Kuang couldn't face He Yan's gaze. He didn't even say goodbye to He Yan and left in a hurry. He Yan and the other two walked behind him. Lin Shuanghe stole a glance at He Yan and whispered, "Sister He, don't be sad." He Yan was a woman. Women were soft-hearted. Lin Shuanghe also knew that He Yan couldn't bear to see the world treat women unfairly. Li Kuang wanted to protect the city. However, this heavy burden was shouldered by his concubine alone. She even paid the price with her life. In his opinion, it was too heartless. These days, he was busy treating the wounded soldiers with the Runda's medical officer. He didn't have time to catch up with He Yan. Today was the first time he saw He Yan since he came to the Rundu. At first glance, he felt that He Yan had lost a lot of weight. She was originally thin and weak. Now, she looked so weak that she could be blown away by the wind. It seemed that there was no food in the city. She was starving to this extent. He Yan shook her head. "I just feel a little helpless." After all, in the world, there were many people who thought like Li Kuang. There were only a few people who thought like her. Let alone the injustice of the world, she couldn't even save a single Yi Luo. Her personal ability was really insignificant. It was harder than ascending to heaven to change the world's opinion. However, He Yan smiled. "I didn't expect that when the commander-in-chief came in that day, he would stand on my side." She looked at Xiao Ju. "I still remember what the commander-in-chief said." Xiao Ju said, "I didn't say it." He Yan was stunned. Of course, she knew that it wasn't Xiao Ju who said that. That was what she answered her teacher when she was in the Xianchang Hall. She didn't expect Xiao Ju to still remember it. She also didn't expect that Xiao Ju would say it under the circumstances at that time. "Then, who said it?" she asked tentatively. Xiao Ju looked ahead and didn't say anything. What appeared in her mind was a spring afternoon in the Xianchang Hall of Shua many years ago. At that time, he was still young. He followed his classmates to study in the school. The spring sun was very warm. It was so hot that it made people have beautiful dreams. He closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. He casually listened to his teacher's lecture. The hero of the previous dynasty killed his concubine to reward the 3 armies and won a good reputation for righteousness. The youths scrambled to speak. Everyone felt that they were the hero. He didn't participate. The world was like a game of chess. People were like ants. At that time, whether it was the hero or the beloved concubine, they were just insignificant drops of water in the torrent of history. Whether they could cause a splash or not, it wasn't important. In the end, it would all pass. He was halfway through his beautiful dream when he heard his teacher say, "Hirufei. Do you have a different opinion?" Hirufei. Xiao Zhu remembered that young master He. Among the many talents in the Xianchang Hall, he was particularly clumsy and conspicuous. However, he was also extremely hardworking. If he was like Lin Shuanghe, it would have been good. However, he had the lofty ambition of defying the heavens and changing his fate written all over his body. This kind of person, in the secular world, would be considered laughable. However, this kind of youth's pure enthusiasm wasn't annoying. Since he was called out by his teacher, he probably had to give a vague answer. Xiao Zhu didn't open his eyes. He calmly listened. Everyone says that Zhang Sun is a loyal and righteous person. That's not false. However, aren't those people who were eaten innocent? I can understand his choice. However, if it were me, I definitely wouldn't do that. The youth who had closed his eyes and pretended to sleep slightly trembled. His long eyelashes were like the wings of a butterfly resting on a flower, startled by the occasional breeze. Oh. What are you going to do? I'm going to take the remaining soldiers and fight to the death with the rebel army outside the city. The person holding the sword should know where the tip of the sword is pointed. Whether it's at the enemy in front of me or the weak behind me. Such childish, naive, and righteous words. A trace of ridicule appeared at the corner of the youth's mouth. He slowly opened his eyes. In an instant, sunlight broke through the window and woke him up from his beautiful dream. The golden light shone on the thin and weak figure in front of him. The originally unremarkable person, at some point, became as dazzling as a rainbow in a mountain stream. I will never draw my sword against the weak. It seemed like this was the first time he seriously looked at Hirufei's appearance. The mask covered his face. No matter when, no matter how stupid this person was, his posture was always upright and straight. The ridicule on the youth's lips dissipated. Gradually, the corners of his mouth curled up. He looked out the window and felt that the spring sun was brilliant and beautiful. Even the idiot who was usually ridiculed by others seemed respectable. Perhaps, he wasn't an idiot after all. When they reached the end of the deep forest, Xiao Zhu didn't reply to He Yan's question. He stopped here and said, I have something to discuss with Li Kuang. You don't have to follow me. He Yan nodded and watched Xiao Zhu leave first. Her current relationship with Xiao Zhu was a little strange. She couldn't be considered a subordinate. In terms of the title bestowed by His Majesty, her official position naturally couldn't be compared to Xiao Zhu's, but she couldn't be considered Xiao Zhu's soldier. But if she wasn't considered a subordinate, Muan Lang didn't have any real power. If she didn't follow Xiao Zhu, she wouldn't even be able to do anything. Lin Shuanghe waved his hand in front of her, Sister He. He Yan came back to his senses, Brother Lin. I was too busy a few days ago. There weren't enough doctors in the Rundu, so I could only bite the bullet and do it. Speaking up to this point, he complained, my title of white-robed divine doctor is too cheap. I don't take a single cent. Those who don't know would think that I'm a person who likes to do good deeds. Sister, when we return to the capital, you can't tell anyone that I've treated women outside of the capital. The rules can't be broken. If others find out, everyone will come to me for treatment. Our Lin family's doorstep will be trampled to pieces. Lin Shuanghe was a person who could always worry about things that he shouldn't worry about. He Yan was speechless for a moment, then said, I'll remember. Lin Shuanghe finally relaxed, then said, I haven't asked you yet. How are you doing here? You're really amazing. You came to the Rundu on your own without even saying anything. The Liangzhou guards almost caused a huge mess. What were you thinking? Even if you want to make a name for yourself, you should take it easy. Why did you come to such a dangerous place? Even if riches and honor are found in danger, we should first protect our lives and then plan for the future. He Yan knew that he was teasing him, so he only smiled. Sister Lin Shuanghe looked at her and stopped waving his fan. He thought for a moment, why do I feel that you've changed a lot after not seeing you for so long? Have I? Yes, Lin Shuanghe replied with certainty. From the first time he saw He Yan in the Yangzhou guards, even when she was heavily injured by Ride-a-Musi, this girl was still alive and kicking, constantly radiating warmth like the sun. Her eyes were always bright and full of life. It had only been a little over a month now. When he saw He Yan again, this girl seemed to have many things on her mind. She seemed to have become strangely silent. It was as if something had shaved away all her happiness in one night, giving birth to another version of herself. It was a bit unfamiliar, gloomy, as if she used something to separate herself from others, making it impossible to approach. Did something happen? He asked. He Yan shook her head, saying with a smile, it's nothing. However, she suddenly thought of another matter and asked Lin Shuanghe, Brother Lin, in the days I left the Yangzhou guards, did something happen in the Yangzhou guards? Why do you say that? Lin Shuanghe rubbed his chin. Do you think something's wrong? He Yan hesitated for a moment, but still said, when I saw the governor this time, he didn't ask me why I came to the Rundu alone, nor did he reprimand me. He seemed very calm. Don't you think this is a bit strange? The governor's personality wasn't like this before. Lin Shuanghe's eyes moved, and he laughed. This is a very obvious matter to begin with. You came to the Rundu to save the people of the Rundu. Since it's to save people, Huaijin definitely won't say anything. You've been busy and tired these days. Huaijin doesn't even have enough time to worry about you, so why would he reprimand you? Little sister you might have some misunderstandings about Huaijin. He's actually not such a heartless person. He's very gentle, especially towards the people he likes. He Yan, Lin Shuanghe's answer was irrelevant, and for a moment, He Yan didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, she could only say, forget it. If he doesn't care about this matter, I don't have to keep worrying about it. He Rufei was more important now. He Rufei had committed such a great crime, and she didn't have much time to take revenge bit by bit. As long as He Rufei held the title of General Feihong, it would be a disaster for the people of Dawei. Don't think too much, Lin Shuanghe comforted her. In a few days, we'll return to Shuojing. When we return to Shuojing, I'll take you around to relax. Oh right, your family is also in Shuojing, right? It's also a good thing for you to reunite with your father and brother after you return. However, your identity is a bit troublesome, but it's not a big deal. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. We'll think of a solution together. Return to Shuojing. He Yan was stunned. She wanted to return to Shuojing, but it was her idea. Why did Lin Shuanghe mean that Xiaoju wanted to go back as well? Not long after you left the Liang Province Guard, Huaijin received a decree from the capital to bring a portion of the Liang Province Guard's new recruits and the Nan Province Guard's soldiers back to Shuojing. However, at that time, we were all worried about the situation in the Rundu. Huaijin and I arrived first, and the soldiers and horses followed behind. In the end, we have to go back. With Yudo's current situation, it's impossible for the world to be as peaceful as before. It's also good to go back earlier. Lin Shuanghe looked at her and asked curiously, what, you don't want to go back? He Yan shook his head, no, I'm not. No, it's just a bit unexpected. If Xiaoju also wanted to go back, then wouldn't they have to travel together again? She had clearly made up her mind to stay far away from him so as not to implicate him. Now, it seemed that this ill-fated relationship was particularly stubborn. It was inevitable that they would have to live together again. However, her current feelings towards Xiaoju were extremely complicated. Because of Hirufei's actions, she had no choice but to face some problems head-on. Dragging Xiaoju into this was truly harmful without any benefit. Forget it. Since things had already gotten to this point, there was no point in thinking about it anymore. She could only do as Lin Shuanghe said. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. She could only go and see what would happen. She spoke a few more words with Lin Shuanghe before leaving. Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yan's back and propped up his fan under his chin. After thinking for a moment, he sighed and said to himself, he actually didn't reprimand her. It seems that once second young Master Shao is enlightened, he really is formidable and brilliant. No wonder he's the number one in the Xian Changguan. He happily followed after her. He Yan bid farewell to Lin Shuanghe and planned to return to her room to write about her encounter with Yudo in the Rundu. She could find some clues from every battle. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will not be defeated in 100 battles. Before she reached her room, she happened to see someone practicing martial arts in the backyard. The martial artist's movements were very big. Originally, the vegetation in the Rundu had been plucked bare due to the famine. His sword and saber movements directly chopped off the branches, leaving only a bare tree trunk. It looked particularly pitiful. Hearing that someone was coming, the person stopped what he was doing and kept his Fangtian halberd by his side. He turned around to look. Silver robe, long halberd, long hair tied up high, arrogant and proud. Who else could it be but Yan He? Generals Yan, He Yan said. Oh, it's He Yan. He Yan walked to the side. His subordinate handed him a soaked handkerchief. He casually wiped his hands and threw it to the side. He walked to the steps and sat down. He did not forget to call out to He Yan, sit. He Yan thought for a moment and sat down beside him. Were you secretly watching me practice my spear just now? Yan, he said, how is it? Have you never seen such brilliant spear skills before? He Yan was speechless for a moment. He smiled and said, it is indeed brilliant. Looking around, in the entire Dewei, there is no one else who has such spear skills other than Generals Yan. Hearing this, He Yan smirked proudly. His gaze towards He Yan became gentler. He scoffed, you have good taste. He Yan sighed in his heart. After so many years, Yan He's temperament did not change at all. As long as one went along with him, it would be easy to please him. When they were at the Xian Chang dojo, if Lin Shuanghe and He Yan were competing for the last place, then Yan He and Xiao Ju were competing for the first place. However, there was no suspense in their competition. Every time, Yan He was second and Xiao Ju was first. The young people who studied in the dojo all came from good family backgrounds. They were the cream of the crop. It was normal for them to be competitive. However, Yan He's competitive nature was exceptionally strong. He Yan still remembered that every few days in the dojo, Yan He would challenge Xiao Ju. It was similar to how Wang Ba challenged her in Liang province. Xiao Ju was too lazy to bother with such challenges most of the time. When she was annoyed, she would challenge Yan He. Regardless of whether it was civil or martial, archery or horse, the result was the same every time. Yan He was defeated but continued to challenge. In fact, on this point, He Yan had always felt that Yan He and she were somewhat similar. Unfortunately, although she had the intention of appreciating each other, Yan He did not appreciate it. He Yan hated him very much. He was arrogant by nature and had his eyes on the top of his head. He probably thought that trash was not worth a second look. It would be good if he was like Lin Shuanghe who had some expertise. However, He Yan was useless. In the Xianchang dojo, being useless was a crime. When Yan He was young, he really did everything he could to make fun of He Yan. He made her look bad in front of everyone. He secretly made things difficult for her. During the archery and horse competition, he purposely bumped He Yan's horse. He really did all kinds of things. Speaking of which, when He Yan was studying in the Xianchang dojo, Yan He was probably the number one person she hated the most. Later, she left the Xianchang dojo and joined the army. Xiao Ju also joined the army. Not long after, Yan He also joined the army. However, Yan He could be considered to have inherited his father's business. Now, he was young and was doing well. That day when the Runda was in danger, Yen wrote him a letter asking for help. She also felt that with He's temperament, he would come. Although she did not expect him to come with Xiaoju. If it was a few years ago, Yen would never have thought that there would be a day when she could sit and talk to He calmly. Actually, she didn't know how she had offended He back then. Logically speaking, she hadn't spoken much to He and hadn't hindered him in any way. Why was it that no matter how carefully she treated him, he just couldn't stand her? This question could be considered one of the 10 unsolved mysteries of Yen's youth. Now that he was sitting beside her, although there was still a shadow of his youth between his brows, but he was much calmer. It had been so many years, but he still hated Hirufei. What kind of power was this? Yen said casually, of course. Everyone says that Dawei has 2 famous generals. One is General Fei Hong and the other is General Feng Yun. I don't think so. There was no need to talk about Governor Xiao. He was indeed very powerful. However, that General Fei Hong was not as good as he was described to be. The Rundu is so close to Huayuan, but he did not come to the city's aid. Moreover, he won the battle in Huayuan with a heavy loss. How can he be compared to Generals Yen? I really don't know how he became famous. Generally speaking, if one cursed Hirufei to death, they would be able to gain Yen's favor. This was definitely true. As expected, Yen's eyes lit up when he heard this. He laughed and said, Muan Lang, I think you are very different from others. Just based on this point alone, you are already better than many people. Although I don't agree with what you said about Xiao Huijin, Hirufei, you are absolutely right. He really can't be compared to me. Yen rolled his eyes silently in his heart and said, yes, but Generals Yen, you also don't like General Fei Hong? I thought that all generals liked him. Don't like him? He shook his head and said unconcernedly, not really. I just feel that he is disappointing and doesn't deserve this title. Yen was elated. Was this going to reveal the top 10 unsolved mysteries of her youth? After so many years, she finally knew the reason why he was always targeting her. What do you mean by disappointing? Yen tilted her head and looked at him. Her eyes were filled with genuine doubts. Because they both disliked Hirufei, he found the young man in front of him more pleasing to the eye. He said without thinking, of course he is disappointing. He received Xiao Huijin's swordsmanship guidance, but he still practiced to that extent. If it was me, I could do 10,000 times better than him. Xiao Huijin was also a very strange person. What kind of foresight did he have? He didn't teach the academy's outstanding talents, but instead spent time teaching a fool. However, he was stingy with sparring with me. Tell me, how can there be such a person in this world? Swordsmanship, guidance? Yes, he looked at her and said, you didn't expect it, right? The so-called unparalleled swordsmanship of General Fei Hong was actually taught by Xiao Huijin. Do you think he is crazy? Chapter 181. Yen looked at He in a daze. His mind was blank. At this moment, he did not know how to respond. There was only one thought that kept surging in his mind. How could it be? How could it be? No, no way. Yen tried to make his expression look relaxed. Military Governor Xiao is not such a warm-hearted person. I knew you would have this reaction. He was a little impatient. That's why I've been too lazy to mention this to anyone all these years. No one would believe me anyway. However, I can swear on my head that this matter is absolutely true. That year when we were studying in the school, Xiao Huijin, that lunatic, actually wrote notes to Hirufei every day to teach him swordsmanship. He seemed to be thinking about the past. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. Every day was simply terrifying. At that time, he was still young and full of vigor. Before Xiao Huijin left the mountain, he had taken the first place in the Xianchang school. After Xiao Huijin entered the Xianchang school, he could only take the second place. This feeling was actually very infuriating. Either he had never been the first and would always be the second, or he had been the first and would always be the first. However, he had always been the first and then the second, and had never surpassed the first. This was actually very damaging to his confidence. It would make others think that he, Yan He, was no match for Xiao Zhu. They were all geniuses. Who would really submit to the other? Yan He wished that he could spend 12 hours a day studying and the other 12 hours to compete with Xiao Zhu. After all, he would gain something from every competition. Know thyself and know thy enemy to be victorious in every battle. Unfortunately, this second young master Xiao was not a patient person. He could even ignore the teacher's words. As for him, he would completely ignore him. Yan He had challenged him 8 to 10 times. If Xiao Zhu could reply once, he would be in a good mood. Yan He was also arrogant. However, compared to Xiao Zhu's calm indifference, he was still slightly inferior. He was almost angered to death by Xiao Zhu. Therefore, when Yan He was young, he didn't have to worry about food or clothing. His life was smooth sailing. The only adversity he faced was Xiao Zhu. At that time, he thought that his only wish in life was to defeat Xiao Zhu. In the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo, the competition for first and second place was so fierce. Similarly, there was no lack of people pursuing the first and second place from the bottom, such as Lin Shuanghe and He Rufei. Lin Shuanghe was fine. As a descendant of the imperial physician clan, his ambitions did not lie in this field. It was fine even if he did not excel in civil or military matters. However, the eldest young master of the He clan was very strange. He Rufei was especially diligent and serious. Even if the improvement was small, he still wanted to try every possibility. Towards such people, Yan He could only look down on them at most, but he could not say that he hated them. For a genius like him to look at mediocre people, there was always a sense of superiority. However, something changed Yan He's opinion. The matter of He Rufei practicing swordsmanship at night, he had accidentally discovered it. Rather than saying that Yan He was chasing after He Rufei's footsteps, it was more accurate to say that he was paying attention to Xiao Zhu's every move. On a certain night, Yan He saw Xiao Zhu sitting in the backyard watching He Rufei practice swordsmanship. He used his clever brain to think for a long time, but could not figure out the reason behind it. What was Xiao Zhu doing? Couldn't sleep and came out to watch the performance? Or did he think that such a clumsy He Rufei would make him laugh? But if that was the case, then it was fine if it was just 1 or 2 days, but he came every day. No wonder he was always sleeping in the dojo during the day. So it was because he did not sleep at night? Xiao Zhu practiced swordsmanship with He Rufei every night, but he did not say or do anything. He only drank tea. He Rufei also had a good temperament. Even though he was being watched like a monkey, he did not get angry. He diligently did his own things. And for some reason, Yan He also came out every day and secretly watched. He only felt that Xiao Zhu must be up to something. He definitely would not do such a useless thing. Later on, when Yan He looked back at himself, he only felt that he could not bear to look at himself. If there were other people in the backyard who looked at them, they would probably think that the Xianchang dojo had raised 3 lunatics. But at that time, Yan He only had one thought. He wanted to see what Xiao Zhu was up to. In the end, he really did find a clue. He Rufei's swordsmanship improved day by day. This was a little strange. He Rufei was in the dojo and the teacher who taught him was also very outstanding. But he did not seem to improve so quickly. And He Rufei who practiced swordsmanship at night was able to fix the especially obvious problems of the previous day. Compared to the beginning, his swordsmanship had improved greatly. Yan He did not believe that He Rufei had such intelligence. He thought for a long time in his heart. As expected, he caught Xiao Zhu who left a note on He Rufei's table. He opened the letter. It was densely filled with the flaws of last night's swordsmanship and the areas that needed improvement. Yan, he said sourly, you are more meticulous than the teacher in the dojo. Xiaoju looked at him coldly and said indifferently, you follow me every day. Do you want to be like those girls outside? Those girls outside were all Xiaoju's admirers. If they had nothing to do, they would occasionally pass by the dojo. After all, Xiaoju had the most beautiful face in the capital. His indifferent and lazy appearance was very seductive. Many people were mesmerized by him. Yan, he threw the letter on the table and looked at him with disgust. Who is like those girls? Xiaoju turned to leave. Yan, he hurriedly followed him out. He was not satisfied and said, you practice swordsmanship with him every night in the courtyard just to give him pointers? You've been following me every night just to watch me teach him swordsmanship. Xiaoju's reply was perfunctory. You are crazy. Yan, he said in disbelief, you are wasting your time on that kind of person. Although he did not like Xiaoju, he had to admit that Xiaoju was very talented. Just like how he treated Xiaoju as a rival, in Yan He's heart, Xiaoju should also treat him as a rival. He should practice hard every day to maintain his first place. But now, it seemed that not only was he not diligent, he did not care about himself. Instead, he went to watch the last place practice swordsmanship and give him pointers. Yan, he found it hard to understand and felt angry. Did this mean that in Xiaoju's heart, he was not as eye-catching as Hirufei? What was this? Hey, are you listening to me? Seeing that Xiaoju was ignoring him, Yan, he was anxious. He walked in front of Xiaoju. Why are you wasting your time on that kind of trash? Is that so? Xiaoju's beautiful eyes glanced at him. He walked up the rockery and found a place to lie down. He put his hands behind his head and closed his eyes. I don't think so. Don't think so. Don't think he is trash. You. Yan, he said angrily, you give him pointers every day, but he only improved a little. There are so many people in the Xiancheng dojo, why did you choose Hirufei? Do you want to try teaching the last place to first place to satisfy your desire? Then let me tell you, give up. With Hirufei's talent, it is impossible. Xiaoju said, I am not that bored. His indifferent attitude made Yan He even angrier. He turned around and walked out. I am going to tell Hirufei to stop hogging you. Using the first place in the Xiancheng dojo to teach you to this level, what a joke. Xiaoju's lazy voice came from behind, competition. Yan, he stopped in his tracks, what? In the future, if you want to compete with me, I will agree 3 times. He did not open his eyes. His eyelashes drooped down, contrasting with his jade-like skin. He leaned against the rockery and pretended to be asleep. He looked like a handsome youth in a painting. The condition is to keep it a secret. Yan, he stood in the same place, his heart in turmoil. In the end, he could not resist the temptation of Xiaoju agreeing to compete with him. He gritted his teeth and said, 2 times. Deal. The sunlight shone in the courtyard. It was hot. Yan, he sighed and said, then, as the price, I will keep it a secret for him and will not tell Hirufei. Even though many years had passed, Yan, he was still angry when he talked about this matter again. If Hirufei had Xiaoju's swordsmanship, it would have been good. But his improvement was not considered a genius. In Yan He's opinion, it was a waste of Xiaoju's careful teaching. But Xiaoju was really patient with Hirufei. Even though he refused to compete with Yan He still guided Hirufei wholeheartedly every day. Yan He did not know where the injustice and jealousy in him came from. It was probably because he could not stand the fact that a person with mediocre talent was guided by a famous teacher, and he even ruined the teacher's reputation. Later on, he made a name for himself. Yan He snorted and said, but in my opinion, if it was me who had received Xiao Huijin's guidance, I would definitely be more than that. I originally thought that he did not disappoint me. I did not expect the battle in Huayuan to make me speechless. He is still the same as before. I think he should get rid of the title, General Feihong, as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will become a joke to others. Kid, He raised his eyes to look at the person beside him. Why aren't you saying anything? Yan was startled. The sun was shining so brightly that her eyes were a little dizzy. She did not know if it was because she was shocked by He's words or something else. She muttered, I am just, very surprised. More than surprised. In the beginning, I thought that Xiao Huijin had gone crazy, he said sarcastically. Also, logically speaking, Rufei owed Xiao Huijin such a big favor. I thought that their relationship was very good. I did not expect that in these few years, the two of them were not very close. This time, the Rundu is in trouble. Huayuan is so close to the Rundu. Xiao Huijin actually wrote a letter to me and did not contact Rufei. It seems that Xiao Huijin has kept this matter a secret until now. Rufei does not know about it. However, I cannot say for sure. After all, that was a matter from many years ago. The two of them are equally famous now. It is natural that Rufei would have a dispute. He really took the opportunity to smear Rufei's name. However, Yan did not have the mind to argue with him. Her eyes were filled with. Back then, her swordsmanship was secretly taught by Xiaoju. She had always thought that it was a kind teacher from the Xiancheng dojo who saw that her swordsmanship was not good enough and secretly taught her. She had always been very grateful for this. If it was not for the He family's incident, she would have been able to see who that teacher was with her own eyes. Not being able to thank him properly had always been a regret in Yan's heart. But now, from He's mouth, she learned the unbelievable truth. It was actually Xiaoju. If it was Xiaoju, everything actually made sense. His skills were not inferior to the teachers in the Xiancheng dojo. Yan did not think of Xiaoju only because of Xiaoju's personality. He was not someone who was willing to help others. Moreover, their relationship could not be considered close. So at that time, he came to the backyard every night to watch her practice swordsmanship and drink tea. It was not to pass the time, but to give her pointers. Yan took a deep breath. Why did she only realize it now? What's with your expression? He frowned. You look very excited. Yan coughed lightly and said, I just feel that Military Governor Xiao is really a good person. What good person? I think he is sick. This person is good at everything in the academy. Who can tell that his eyesight is so bad? He patted the dust off his body and stood up. He grabbed the Fangtian halberd beside him. Rufei is not happy to talk about him. Forget it, I am going to continue practicing with the halberd. What about you? Yan's thoughts were in a mess. Naturally, he did not have the mood to watch this person flaunt his skills in front of him. He said, if that is the case, then I will not disturb Generals Yan. I will return to my room first. Yan turned and left. The sky gradually darkened. Xiaoju came out of the hall. Li Kuang wiped the sweat off his forehead. Because of the Yi Luo incident, he did not have the face to see Yan. When he saw Yan, he felt nervous and fearful. He originally thought that it would be better to talk to Xiaoju. However, compared to the young Muan Lang, this right military governor was even more difficult to deal with. He carefully asked about everything that happened in the Runda these days, including the scarecrow at the city gate tower and the night attack on the enemy camp to burn their provisions. Li Kuang did not take credit for himself. He completely exposed Yan's idea. As for the women and Yi Luo that were captured, Xiaoju had already seen them. When Li Kuang repeated the story, this young military governor did not seem as agitated as Yan. Instead, he seemed rather calm. However, that calmness in Li Kuang's eyes made him feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. After asking about everything that happened in the Rundu, Li Kuang also knew that they would be returning to Shuajing in a few days. Li Kuang's heart let out a big sigh of relief. No matter what, the Rundu problem was solved. He would leave a portion of his troops here. However, those Yuto would not dare to come again. The city was finally defended. However, it was not defended. Li Kuang understood one thing very clearly. He had lost the hearts of the people. His position as military governor would not last for long. The tall and burly man sat alone in the room. After a long while, he buried his hands in his palms and silently cried. This was the punishment he deserved. The night in the Runda was very cool. The heat of the day had completely faded at night. However, because of the famine in the city, there was no light from the plants and trees. There was a sense of desolation that only existed in autumn. Xiao Ju placed the drink of autumn on the table. Just as he turned around and took off his outer garment, he heard someone knocking on the door. The knocking was polite and respectful. He paused. Come in. The door opened. He Yan stood at the door. He looked at him and asked, Military Governor, can I come in? When he was in the Liang Province Guards, this person never knocked on the door. When he wanted to find someone, he did not even go through the main door to save time. He directly knocked on the door a few times. He did not care if the person on the other side answered. He just treated it as if he had already said hello. Then, he skillfully opened the door and popped his head out from behind the door. He had a bright smile on his face and called out with perfect pronunciation, Military Governor. He had only stayed in the Rundu for a little more than a month, but he had become so obedient. However, there was a hint of politeness that was hard to detect. Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows slightly. He put down his outer garment and asked calmly, what's the matter? He didn't answer her, yes or no. Anyway, He Yan would come in by himself. As expected, He Yan walked in naturally and closed the door after being obedient for only a moment. The house looked luxurious. After all, the people in the Rundu relied on the provisions brought by Yan He to survive. Naturally, there were no tea leaves. Xiao Ju picked up the white jade porcelain teapot on the table and poured water into the teacups. He Yan walked over and said, let me do it. She took the teapot from Xiao Ju's hands. Xiao Ju didn't decline. When he moved, he accidentally touched He Yan's finger. He Yan's heart trembled slightly. He raised his head and looked at the other person. This person's eyes were lowered, and he couldn't see what kind of expression he had. He Yan pretended that nothing had happened. He walked to the other side of the table and slowly poured water. Xiao Ju had already broken the rules of physical intimacy many times. However, when she was in the Liang Province Guards, there were many inconveniences. She tried her best to ignore this. However, now, she was well aware of many things. She also understood her feelings for Xiao Ju. As the saying goes, one can be unyielding if one has no desires. If one has a guilty conscience, one would feel uncomfortable. She scolded herself in her heart for being muddle-headed. She tried her best to speak calmly. Military Governor, Brother Lin said today that we will be returning to the capital together in a few days. Xiao Ju sat down in front of the table. You don't want to go back? No. She originally planned to return to the capital. It's just that why did His Majesty suddenly summon you back to the capital? And Generals Yan? If all of them return to the capital, won't it be dangerous outside? These Yuto were like tigers watching their prey. Even if His Majesty was worried about the safety of the capital, there was no need to summon all of Dawei's valiant generals back. If the Yuto were to make a comeback at this time, although the possibility was not high, they still had to be prepared. We will know when we return. Xiao Ju did not directly answer her question. That's right. Before returning, it was not good to talk about it. However, she did not really come here for this matter. She just wanted to find a reason to start the conversation. She handed one of the teacups to Xiao Ju and held the other one in her hand. Holding the warm tea in her hand, the girl lowered her head and took a sip. After a while, she raised her head and looked like she was trying to find something to say. Military Governor, I met Generals Yan during the day. Xiao Ju nodded and lowered her head to read. His attitude these days was very strange. He was cold, but he was so calm that he could be called gentle. He was gentle, but he did not take the initiative to talk to He Yan. Of course, he did not take the initiative to cause trouble for He Yan. He Yan did not understand this subtle sense of distance. General Yan seems to dislike General Fei Hong very much. He Yan could only bite the bullet and continue. I sat with him for a while and listened to him talk. Only then did I know that military governor, General Fei Hong, and General Yan are classmates. Her pretentious tone made Xiao Ju pause for a moment. After a while, she said, "Stay away from him." He Yan pushed the teacup forward and looked at her. I asked General Yan why he hated young Master He so much. General Yan told me. She deliberately dragged her words and looked at Xiao Ju's reaction. General Yan was jealous because you taught General Fei Hong swordsmanship every night. That's why he hated him for so many years. He Yan held her chin and asked with a puzzled expression, "So military governor, do you actually like General Fei Hong?" She looked like a curious subordinate who wanted to hear about her superior's story, but her heart was beating very fast. Although Yan he said so, He Yan still wanted to verify it personally. He didn't know if what Yan he said was true, and he didn't know why Xiao Ju did this. Xiao Ju closed the book and looked at her calmly. "I'm not gay." "I didn't say you were gay." He Yan said, "What I mean is, do you admire General Fei Hong a lot? That's why you helped him secretly. Were you really the one who taught him swordsmanship every night?" Xiao Ju did not say anything. Based on his personality, this was a silent admission. He Yan suddenly sat up straight. It was hard to describe how she felt at this moment. After a while, she asked, "Why did you teach him?" Xiao Ju looked up at her. "Why are you asking this?" He Yan lowered her head and hid the emotions in her eyes. "I just feel that it's not worth it for you. I heard from General Yan that when young Master He was in the Xianchang school, he was not very good at his studies and was very ordinary in both civil and martial arts. I don't know why the military governor chose him to teach him swordsmanship. And you did so much, but you didn't tell young Master He? Does young Master He still not know that you were the one who helped him that year? Don't you think it's not worth it for you to do this? It's just a casual act. There's no need to worry." Xiao Ju said calmly, "What does it matter if he knows or not?" He Yan stared straight at him. She thought to herself, "It does matter. If I knew it was him, maybe my feelings for him would have lasted longer. Maybe when Su Zhiheng appeared, I wouldn't have fallen head over heels for him." She had been lonely for too long. It was Xiao Ju who appeared first, but it was too late for her to fall in love. Xiao Ju seemed to have noticed her strange expression. He frowned and said, I feel so sorry for the military governor." He Yan smiled. "But this young Master He is too much. Even if the military governor hides your achievements and reputation and doesn't want others to know about it. Young Master He doesn't even know how to investigate the kind person who helped him silently. If you just let him be, he should have found out about you earlier. The military governor also contributed to his current reputation." She was so anxious. Xiao Ju looked at her thoughtfully. He suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, he also tried to find me." He Yan was stunned. Under the light, his face was calm and handsome. He seemed to be reminiscing about the past. His beautiful black eyes were deep and there were ripples in them. It almost made people drown. Actually, Xiao Ju had seen He Rufei look for people without rhyme or reason. Every time she wrote on the notes, He Rufei expressed her gratitude to him. Some were fearful, some were clumsy, and there was even one time when she tried to catch him. But how could he catch him? He sat on the tree and watched He Rufei walk under the tree. Although he was wearing a mask, he could imagine this person's dejected appearance. It was inexplicably a little pitiful. He finally relented and agreed to let He Rufei see him. Although the result might not be very happy. Once, he and I agreed to meet at the school. And then? Did you meet him? The elegant man lowered his head and said indifferently, "I'm going." But he didn't come that night. Chapter 182. When she returned to her room, He Yen lay on her bed, tossing and turning restlessly. The window was open, and a little wind came in, blowing her awake. The conversation she had with Xiao Ju was still ringing in her ears. It turned out that on the night she left the He family to join the army, Xiao Ju had actually come to meet her. It was just a freak combination of circumstances that caused them to miss each other. Once they missed each other, there wouldn't be another chance. Just like how He Yen didn't know that the person who secretly taught him swordsmanship back then was Xiao Ju, the current Xiao Ju wouldn't know that the person he secretly helped back then had changed. She tried so hard to hide her identity, and so much she wanted to thank him as his classmate back then. It turned out that she and Xiao Ju had so many fateful encounters in both her previous and current lives. It was just that their fates were short, and it just had to happen now. He Yen sat up, thought for a while, and got off the bed with determination. She walked to the table and lit the oil lamp with a match. Zhao Shiming was a scholar, and the 4 treasures of the study were placed everywhere in the room. She ground the ink, found a piece of paper, sat down at the table, and started writing slowly. All the matters in the rundu were settled in 3 days. It was also time for Xiao Ju and the others to leave. Before He Yen left, she found Xiao Shiming. After the Yi Luo incident, He Yen didn't speak to Li Kuang again. Every time she saw Li Kuang, she would think of the sweet girl with dimples on her cheeks when she smiled. She thought that Li Kuang was the same. Every time he bumped into He Yen, he would avoid her gaze. So there were some things that she didn't want to mention to Li Kuang. Zhao Shiming was sitting in the room, reading official documents. The rundu was besieged by the Yuto, and the merchants in the city went on strike. Everything was in a mess. Now that the Yuto had been defeated and the rundu had returned to its peaceful state, it would take time to restore its peaceful days. Master Zhao. He Yen walked into the room and called out to him. Zhao Shiming raised his head from the documents. Seeing that it was He Yen, he paused for a moment, then stood up and said with a warm smile, "Xiao He Darren, what brings you here today?" Zhao Shiming liked He Yen very much. He was a scholar, so he couldn't get along with a boorish man like Li Kuang. As for Xiao Ju and Yen He, one was cold while the other was arrogant. Just looking at them made him fearful. He Yen, on the other hand, was different. He was young, intelligent, brave, kind, and loyal. He was also handsome and elegant. At first glance, one could tell that he was cultured and likable. If it weren't for the fact that his granddaughter was too young, Zhao Shiming would have wanted to recruit this young man as his grandson-in-law. He Yen smiled and said, "Lord Zhao is too polite. I am here to bid farewell to Mr. Zhao. Tomorrow, I will be returning to Shuojing with the governor. Thank you for taking care of me during my stay in the rundu." Zhao Shiming liked this young man even more. Look at him, he even specially came to bid farewell to him. He was very polite. He smiled and replied, "Xiao He Darren, please don't say that. You are the benefactor who saved the rundu. This time, I didn't have much to entertain you when I came to the rundu. Instead, I caused Xiao He Darren to suffer a lot. If Xiao He Darren comes to the rundu again in the future, I will definitely treat you well. I hope Xiao He Darren won't hold it against me for being rude this time." He Yen supported Zhao Shiming's hand that was about to bow and said, "This junior doesn't dare." He actually addressed him as a junior. Zhao Shiming was stunned. Before he could regain his senses, he saw the young man in front of him looking at him with a solemn expression. "Actually, I came here today to ask for Lord Zhao's help." Zhao Shiming was not unfamiliar with this expression. Previously, when He Yen asked his men to help pass a message to Yen He, he also looked like this. Did he have a favor to ask of him again? Zhao Shiming was very pleased. He Yen looked for him instead of Li Kuang. It was clear that he treated him as one of his own. The things that Muan Lang asked for were usually very easy. It was an honor for him to be able to help. Thinking of this, Zhao Shiming smiled and said, "Xiao He Darren, please feel free to ask. I will definitely do my best." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Shiming saw the young man in front of him lift the corner of his robe and kneel down in front of him. You. He was shocked. Then, thank you very much, Lord Zhao. The servants outside did not know what the people inside were talking about. After a while, when He Yan walked out of the door, the servants went in to serve tea. Only then did they see Zhao Shiming slumped in front of the table. He looked absent-minded and his gaze was unfocused. Master. The servant called out to him. Zhao Shiming finally regained his senses. He swallowed his saliva and said, It's nothing, it's nothing. He clenched the letter in his hand tightly. On the other side, He Yan walked out of the door and took a deep breath. She did not know whether her decision was right or wrong, but it seemed to be the best way to get Xiao Ju out of the picture. A person walked towards her. She was as delicate and beautiful as a flower. It was Ying Xiang. When Ying Xiang saw He Yan, she bowed and greeted He Yan, He Darren. Now, she did not call He Yan, young master He. Instead, she called him, He Darren. Miss Ying Xiang, He Yan replied. When he saw that she was holding something that looked like clothes in her hands, he could not help but take a second look. Ying Xiang noticed her gaze and smiled. Fourth young master asked this servant to tidy up a bit. We will be leaving for Shuo capital tomorrow. The weather in Rundu is very good, so the clothes will dry quickly. Returning to Shuo capital. He Yan frowned slightly. You are also leaving tomorrow? Chu Zhao was originally on his way back to Shuo capital, but he was trapped in the city because of the Yudo siege. Now that the Yudo had left, they naturally had to leave as well. However, he did not expect that he would be traveling with Xiao Ju. Yes, Ying Xiang replied with a smile. Military Governor Xiao also knows that fourth young master is traveling with everyone. There might be other Yudo along the way, so it is better to have more people to take care of each other. Xiao Ju did not want to take care of Chu Zhao. However, since Xiao Ju already knew about this, it was useless for her to say anything more. That day, when Li Kuang wanted to kill the captive women, Chu Zhao also stood up for him. No matter what his goal was, He Yan should thank him on the surface. Help me thank fourth young master for standing on the side of the captive women in front of the army commander that day. He Yan said. Ying Xiang's eyes curved into crescents. Yes, He Darren. After He Yan left, Ying Xiang carried the clothes back into the room. Chu Zhao was standing in front of the window. Ying Xiang packed the clothes into a bag. Her movements were very fast, and in just a moment, everything was packed up. Fourth young master, Ying Xiang walked to Chu Zhao's side and said in a low voice, Just now on the road, this servant met Miss He. Miss He asked this servant to thank fourth young master for standing up for the captive women in front of Lord Li. Chu Zhao smiled and did not say anything. After a moment of silence, Ying Xiang said, Fourth young master should not have done that. Chu Zhao, oh. Perhaps the Prime Minister's men are in the city. If the Prime Minister sees fourth young master like this, he will not be happy. Su Jingfu was a person who hated others who acted on their own initiative. Since the Rundu incident had nothing to do with him, not only did Chu Zhao speak up, but he also brought up Su Jingfu. Once Su Jingfu knew about this, he would definitely be unhappy with Chu Zhao. What's done is done. Don't worry. Chu Zhao smiled slightly. As for the Prime Minister, I will explain it to him. Why did young master do that? Ying Xiang asked softly. Even if young master did not do anything, with Miss He's ability, no one would be able to make things difficult for her. Chu Zhao did not answer. He only looked at the sky outside the window. Why? It was probably because the way she stood in front of those women reminded him of the time when he was young in the brothel. When someone bullied him, Yi Runmei stood in front of him. In his life, he rarely had anyone to protect him. Other than Yi Runmei, He Yan was the only one who could protect him. She protected those women, just like how she protected him in Jiang. One person protected another without any selfish motives, without any blood ties, and without any intimate relationship. She just did it because she felt that it was the right thing to do. She was so flamboyant that it made people envious. She was so upright that it made people jealous. She was like a ray of light that even people who were close to her could not help but be illuminated. That was why he stood up at that moment and thought that he was a righteous and brave person. However, he was not a ray of light after all. He was just a shadow. The day to leave the Runda had arrived. Li Kuang and Zhao Shiming went out of the city to send them off. The southern prefecture soldiers and the Liangzhou guards did not set off with Xiao Ju. They were rushing back to the capital and only brought Yan He's troops with them. The city was bleak. Although there was sunlight, it seemed to be covered with a layer of faint gray. He Yan felt sentimental. The last time she left the Rundu, she was still Deputy General He. She also chatted and laughed with Li Kuang. Now that she was leaving the Rundu, the two of them were no longer the same as before. Time flew by quickly. The grapevines in the Rundu had already grown into new clumps. A group of people stood at the city gate. He Yan was about to get on her horse when she suddenly heard someone's voice behind her. Lord Xiao He. He Yan turned her head to look. She saw that many people had gathered in front of the Runda city gate. They did not dare to go forward. They just stood on both sides of the street and looked at them silently. A group of women walked out from the end of the crowd. The one who called out to her was the leader. They were dressed in neat clothes, and there were still scars on their faces that had not yet healed. They were the captives that He Yan had rescued from the hands of the Wutua people during the night attack on the enemy camp. They were also the women that He Yan had saved from Li Kuang's sword. He Yan still remembered the woman who spoke. That day, she was the one who tearfully persuaded him not to fight with Li Kuang and sacrificed herself willingly. However, He Yan later found out from Zhao Shiming that this woman originally lived in a village outside the city. After the Yudo came, he killed her husband and son. She was the only one left in her family. She originally thought that she had been defiled by the Yuto and was afraid of the strange gazes of the people outside. Because her family was not around, she already had the intention to commit suicide. Therefore, when Li Kuang came to find her, she was the first to accept. That day, if He Yan did not stand up, if Xiao Ju did not arrive, perhaps these women would have died under Li Kuang's sword. Li Kuang's expression was a little uneasy. There were many things that one did not realize in the current situation. But when things were over and one looked back, one would realize how crazy they were. Those women walked in front of He Yan and knelt down. Without saying a word, they kowtowed to He Yan a few times. He Yan was stunned. You all, thank you, Lord Xiao He, they said. The women's spirits were much better than before. Perhaps it was the food that He Yan brought that filled their stomachs, or perhaps it was the words that he said that day that gave them the courage to live on. Zhao Shiming walked to He Yan's side and said in a low voice, Lord Xiao He, these women, those who still have family members have gone home. Those who are homeless have been placed together by the government. They will work, and in the future, the situation that Lord Xiao He is worried about will not happen. He solemnly promised He Yan, I will take good care of them. He Yan was slightly relieved. He bowed to Zhao Shiming. Thank you, Lord Zhao. Zhao Shiming stroked his beard and smiled. It's my duty. Since they are from the Rundu, as the parent official of the Rundu, I should take good care of them. He Yan also smiled. There were many things in the world that would change for the better bit by bit. As long as someone did it, change would eventually happen, no matter how small the change was. She helped the leader of the women up and said softly, let them get up too. Live well in the future. Remember, I saved your lives. No matter what, don't give up on your lives. The woman nodded. Yan He stood under the city gate, he crossed his arms and said, why does this He fellow look more popular than you? He cast a sidelong glance at Xiao Ju, isn't he your subordinate? Why aren't you better than him? Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, brother, he is gentle and amiable. Of course, everyone likes him. There aren't many people in the world who are considerate of others. There are even fewer people who are willing to draw their swords for the sake of others' safety. He couldn't stand Lin Shuanghe's unprofessional behavior. He sneered, "What's wrong with brother He? Is everyone in the Liang province guard so chaotic?" Chaotic? Lin Shuanghe nodded. There are even more chaotic. It's just that you don't know about it. Ying Xiang stood beside Chu Zhao and quietly watched as the girl bid farewell to the women she saved and boarded the carriage. The citizens of the Runda city and the city guards didn't say anything, but their gazes followed He Yan with gratitude. She was indeed a likable girl, whether it was in Jiang or the Rundu. Let's go. Chu Zhao turned around and boarded his own carriage. The city gates opened and the soldiers and horses marched. The sunlight shone on the end of the long road. It was like a bright road that led to the future. It took 10 days to reach Jinling from the Runda city. After passing Jinling city, they went straight to Shuo capital. The soldiers and horses that were hurrying on their way sat down and rested in the bushes. Lin Shuanghe was watching He Yan roasting eggs. He was a pampered young master who didn't do any household chores. Naturally, he couldn't do such rough chores. He Yan knew how to cook too, but he saw that the fish he roasted was so black that it was hard to eat. Later on, he decided to do it himself. Xiao Ju was talking to Qi Wu on the other side. He Yan and Lin Shuanghe sat together. Lin Shuanghe watched her skillful movements and sighed, "Brother He, you're really good at everything. You can climb over walls and beat hooligans. I've seen so many." He lowered his voice, "None of the women can compare to you. Really, sister, when you reach Shuo capital, you'll still be number one in my heart." He Yan threw the roasted eggs into his arms. "You flatter me." Lin Shuanghe hurriedly peeled the shells and asked her, "When we reach Shuo capital, what do you want to do?" "There's nothing in Liangzhou. Shuo capital is prosperous. If you have time, I'll take you to the market every day." What kind of situation was this? This person still wanted to play. He Yan was speechless for a moment. She thought of another matter and asked Lin Shuanghe, "Oh right, why didn't Dr. Shen come with you to Runda this time? She should be going back to Shuo capital." When He Yan left the Liangzhou guards, she sealed Shen Mushue's acupoints. Although it was to protect her, she wasn't sure what happened to Shen Mushue after that. This time, Xiao Ju, Yan He, and Lin Shuanghe came, but they didn't see Shen Mushue. However, Xiao Ju was going back to Shuo capital. Shen Mushue had no reason to stay in the Liangzhou guards alone. "Dr. Shen." Lin Shuanghe answered matter-of-factly, "She's a girl. When Huijin and I rushed to the Rundu, we didn't rest day and night. How can she stand this? If we bring her along, I'm afraid that she'll slow us down. So it's better not to bring her along. As for the medical officer, I alone am enough." Huijin asked Shen Han and the others to bring Dr. Shen over later. He Yan nodded. In the next moment, Lin Shuanghe's face suddenly came close and looked at her mischievously. "Why did you mention Dr. Shen alone? Are you jealous?" "Jealous? Jealous of what?" He Yan was so scared that she almost smashed his head with the tree branch. Hearing this, she just sat up straight and calmly said, "I sealed her acupoints before I left. I just feel guilty." "Is that really the case?" Lin Shuanghe deliberately dragged out his words. "If that's the case, then Huijin's painstaking efforts will be in vain." He Yan, what painstaking efforts? Lin Shuanghe stuffed an egg into his mouth and said slowly, "You won't care even if I tell you. It's better not to tell you." He Yan was so anxious that she wanted to grab Lin Shuanghe's head and shake it with all her might to see what it was that was shaking out. However, Lin Shuanghe was a cunning person when it came to matters between men and women. Moreover, he was close to Xiao Ju. If he really got some confirmation and turned around to tell Xiao Ju, they wouldn't even be friends. That would be extremely awkward. She could only sit there reservedly. Even though her heart was pounding, her expression was calm and indifferent. "Then I really don't care." "Just don't say it." Lin Shuanghe looked at her pretentious appearance and tried his best to hold back his laughter. He thought to himself, let's see how long you can hold back. Young people. Ah, young people. Thousands of miles away in Liangzhou, the guard station was busy at this moment. Liang Ping was helping to check if there was anything missing in the room. They were about to leave for Shuajing. A portion of the Liangzhou guard was left behind, and the rest were going to the capital. Shen Han was going to leave with them. Liang Ping, Ma Damei, and the other instructors were going to stay at the Liangzhou guard. Shen Muxue was naturally going to leave as well. Many days ago, when Xiao Zhu and Lin Shuanghe were about to leave for the Rundu, Shen Muxue had asked to go with them. However, he was rejected by Xiao Zhu. His rejection was very straightforward and she didn't say why. However, when Lin Shuanghe saw Shen Muxue's ugly expression, he tried to smooth things over with a smile. Miss Shen, the situation in the Rundu is critical. Huijin and I will be traveling day and night. How can a girl like you follow us? If you get hurt, even if you don't mind, I won't be able to bear it. In any case, Shen Jiaotou and the others will leave in the future. When you come back together, Shen Jiaotou will take good care of you. The speed of soldiers and horses is slow and there are many of them. Huijin and I will be relieved to protect you. Isn't that right? Shen Muxue didn't say anything. Lin Shuanghe took it as a silent agreement and turned to leave with a smile. Shen Muxue looked at his back and asked, Young Master Lin, second young Master Xiao is going to the Rundu for He Yan, right? Lin Shuanghe paused and looked at her. His gaze was sincere and puzzled. Why would you think that? Shen Muxue pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She knew that it was ridiculous to say this. Xiao Zhu wasn't someone who would easily change for someone, but she still felt uneasy. The sound from outside interrupted her memories. Liang Ping called out to her, Dr. Shen, is there anything else you want to carry onto the carriage? Shen Muxue came back to her senses and answered as she walked out the door. Liang Ping stood outside. The sun shone on his face and made his face red. He was sweating profusely. He was holding a stack of boxes in his hands and was walking unsteadily towards the carriage. Xiao Zhu left in a hurry and didn't pack his things. Before he left, he instructed Shen Han to take everything in his room with him when he returned to Shuajing. Fortunately, Xiao Zhu didn't have many things with him. Other than some clothes, there wasn't much left. Shen Muxue saw that Liang Ping was walking unsteadily, so she stepped forward and said, Let me help you. Liang Ping's face turned even redder. No need, no need. The chief instructor told me that these things belong to the governor and asked me to organize them myself. How can I trouble Dr. Shen? He sighed in his heart. Miss Shen was really kind-hearted and didn't put on airs. As the daughter of a big family, she didn't despise martial artists like him. Shen Muxue didn't know what Liang Ping was thinking. He only heard that these things belonged to Xiao Zhu and said, You're carrying so many things at once. It's inevitable that you'll drop them. Don't worry, I'll help you. As he spoke, he helped carry the topmost box. The box wasn't big. He walked forward with Liang Ping. Liang Ping wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Seeing that Shen Muxue didn't seem to be struggling, he relaxed a little. He smiled, Thank you, Dr. Shen. The two of them walked to the side of the carriage. Liang Ping let Shen Muxue get on the carriage first. He would go and carry the boxes himself. It was hot outside. Shen Muxue nodded in agreement. She sat quietly with the box in her hands and looked at the busy soldiers in the distance. Her gaze fell on the box in her arms. The box looked ordinary. She didn't know what was inside. Xiao Zhu didn't bring many things with him. Since Shen Han wanted to bring them back to Shuo capital, it must be very important. However, she picked up the box and weighed it. It was too light, as if it didn't contain anything. Could it be empty? It was rare for her to be curious. It shouldn't be Xiao Zhu's official documents or letters. He would only carry these things with him. If she opened it, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Shen Muxue's fingers rested on the box. She looked outside the carriage. The soldiers were far away, so no one saw her movements. With a click, the box was opened. There were some brushes, inkstones, paperweights and the like inside. It was just a small thing. She was about to close it when her gaze suddenly froze. After a while, she reached out and took out two things. One was a dough figurine. The dough had already dried and the color was dark. It was a woman with a charming smile. The other was a wooden carving. In the carving, a warship was capsized and the fire was fierce. The general standing at the bow of the ship was valiant and valiant. It was a female general. Chapter 183. 10 days later, the group arrived at Jinling. It was different from Jiang's warmth and simplicity, and it was also different from Rundu's solemnity and bleakness. Jinling City was gentle and affectionate, like a beautiful and elegant lady, stained with a thin layer of pink. The sunlight was clear, the morning sun was romantic, and the soft language of Wunong was filled with music. It was truly a rich and noble village in the human world. Lin Shuanghe couldn't walk as soon as he arrived. He could only look at the delicate lady walking on the street and praise, "This is the immortal cave." No wonder people always say that once you enter Jinling, you don't want to leave. He Yan. You said the same thing when you were in Jiang. Lin Shuanghe opened his fan, "Brother He, I'm just doing as the Romans do when in Rome." He Yan, what a good, when in Rome do as the Romans do. When they arrived at Jinling, they naturally had to greet the governor of Jinling's Yingtian prefecture. It wasn't convenient for Yan He's troops to move around freely in the city. Yingtian prefecture had already received the news of Yan He's arrival, so Yan He also went to Yingtian prefecture to receive them first so that he could settle the troops down. Outside Yingtian prefecture, the imperial bodyguards were already waiting outside. There were already people arranged to settle the troops down. He Yan was supposed to stand with Wang Ba and the others in the troops' team. However, Lin Shuanghe patted her shoulder, "You're now Muan Lang personally appointed by His Majesty. You're no longer a commoner. Of course, you should be with us. It's a good opportunity to show you the world of officialdom." He Yan was speechless. Just as he was about to ask Xiao Ju, Yan He glanced at her and said, "You're right. Since you have an official position, you should follow us." Yan He was someone who had his eyes on top of his head and was very difficult to get along with. However, he treated He Yan differently. Others were a little surprised, but He Yan was well aware that this was all thanks to him degrading He Rufei in front of Yan He, making him feel that he was a rare soulmate in the world. Everyone entered the room together. There was a person sitting in the main hall. When he saw them enter, he stood up. He was wearing the robes of an inspector general. This person was very young and thin. His facial features were delicate and had a hint of determination. He did not look like an inspector general. Instead, he looked like a student of the Imperial College. He stood up and bowed to Yan He. "Generals Yan." Then, his gaze fell on Xiao Ju and he was immediately shocked. However, this shock was fleeting and soon turned into shock. He Yan was also shocked. He did not expect to meet Yang Mingji here. What kind of coincidence was this? One Xiao Ju, one Lin Shuanghe, one Yan He and one Yang Mingji. They were her classmates in Xianchang Gymnasium. She actually met 4 of them here. This was too unbelievable. However, He Yan raised his eyes and secretly glanced at Xiao Ju. When they were studying, wasn't Xiao Ju and Yang Mingji the closest? He Yan had received help from Xiao Ju when he was young. However, on the surface, he was not close to Xiao Ju. At that time, Xiao Ju also had her own good friends. Lin Shuanghe was one and Yang Mingji was another. Compared to Lin Shuanghe, who did not do proper work and only knew how to play, Yang Mingji was much more serious. Yang Mingji's father, Master Yang, was a scholar in Guanwen Palace. Yang Mingji was very talented when he was young, probably because of his father. However, his health was not good. Every few days, he would have headaches and fevers. Hence, his martial sciences were a mess. However, the teachers and other youths would not laugh at him because of this. In the humanities, Yang Mingji was really amazing. It was said that he could speak eloquently at the age of 5. At the age of 8, he could discuss the classics with famous scholars from Dewey. When He Yan entered Xiancheng Gymnasium, Yang Mingji was already very famous. His political theory and poetry were the best. He also had good handwriting. He Yan was very envious. He was also very gentle. He was not as lively as Lin Shuanghe, nor as indifferent as Xiao Zhu. His gentleness was just right. In Xiancheng Gymnasium, if Yan He was always competing with Xiao Zhu in the martial sciences, then Yang Mingji would be on par with Xiao Zhu in the humanities. Unlike his gentle temperament, Yang Mingji's political theory and poetry always had a bit of sharpness. It was enough to see his inner pride. He also liked to criticize current affairs. When he was in the mood, he even dared to criticize the imperial court in his articles. He was often scolded by the teachers, but He Yan could see that the teachers admired him. When he was young, He Yan always thought that a genius like Yang Mingji would definitely enter the government service. Once he did, he would definitely leave a deep mark in Dewey's history books. However, after she joined the army, she did not hear any news about Yang Mingji. She never expected to see him here today. She also never expected that Yang Mingji would become the governor of Jinling. He did not stay in Shuajing. Why was that? And Xiao Zhu's expression was also indifferent when she saw him. This was very strange. Xiao Zhu's relationship with Yang Mingji was like her relationship with Lin Shuanghe. But now, when they met, they were so distant that they seemed like strangers. He Yan was not the only one who noticed this. Yan He also noticed this. Yan He said, "Hey, isn't this brother Mingji? How did you become the governor here?" Yan He did not know either. It seemed that Yang Mingji had been very low-key all these years. Yang Mingji came back to his senses and smiled at Yan He. It was just a coincidence. Xiao Huijin, this is your good friend from the past. Why are you so cold? Yan He's gaze moved between the two of them. Did you two have a fight? He asked this casually, as if he was still a teenager. However, Yang Mingji's expression changed slightly. If you want to talk about the past, you can talk about it in the future. Now is not the time to talk about the past. Lin Shuanghe cut in at the right time and changed the topic. That, Yang. Sir, we will be stopping in Jinling for 2 days. Please help us settle down. Yan He's troops, you can do as you see fit. After resting for 2 days, we will return to the capital. Lin Shuanghe's attitude was also very strange. Even though Xiao Zhu was a person who did not show her emotions, Lin Shuanghe was a shrewd person. However, looking at his current attitude towards Yang Mingji, it was as if he was deliberately drawing a clear line between them. There was no longer the friendliness from before. There was no need to mention Chu Zhao. He had already seen through the undercurrent. No matter how careless Yan He was, he also realized that something was wrong. This time, he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he kept his mouth shut. Yang Mingji's smile was a bit stiff. Of course. The rooms have already been tidied up. I will ask someone to bring you there later. Lin Shuanghe closed his fan. Thank you, Sir Yang. Not long after, a few servant girls came and led He Yan and the others to the place where they would be staying. The place they would be staying was not in the governor's manor. It was a residence not far from the Qinhuai River in Jinling. Perhaps it was under Yang Mingji's name. The house had already been tidied up. The rooms were just right, one for each person. Chu Zhao also got a room. He did not talk much with He Yan along the way. He seemed to be silent and quiet. Sometimes, he did not know what he was thinking. This saved He Yan a lot of trouble. Xiao Zhu also did not argue with him. They were at peace for the time being. He Yan's room was the most remote one. In this group of people, her position was the lowest, so this arrangement was understandable. However, Lin Shuanghe jumped out and said to her, "Brother I saw ants in the room I was staying in just now. I'm scared. Can I change rooms with you?" Yan, she said, "they are all in one place. If you have them in your room, then I will also have them in my room. But I'm only scared of the ants in my room." He answered very cleverly. Yan who heard their conversation, frowned. "Lin Shuanghe, are you crazy?" "Yes." Lin Shuanghe smiled and asked, "Do you have medicine?" Yan he left in a huff. Chu Xiao looked at Yan thoughtfully. He shook his head and smiled. Then, he followed Ing Xiang into his room. Yan stared at Lin Shuanghe, who was laughing happily in front of her. She could tell at a glance what Lin Shuanghe was up to. Lin Shuanghe's room was right next to Xiao Ju's. He was pushing her to Xiao Ju's side. Only the heavens knew that she had just made up her mind to stay away from Xiao Ju. She looked up and saw Xiao Ju turn her head to look at her. She was speechless for a moment. Lin Shuanghe said, "Then it's settled. Brother I'm leaving." He quickly hugged his bag and rushed into Yan's room. Yan had no choice but to brace herself and walk into Lin Shuanghe's room. Yan let out a sigh of relief when the door closed. She knew that this wasn't the Liang province guard, and the two rooms didn't have doors that could be opened easily. However, she still felt a bit nervous. She cursed herself in her heart. When she was in Jiang City, she had slept in the same room in Cui Yu's residence. What was there to be nervous about? Now, there was a wall between them. Could it be that she could fly? Thinking of this, she relaxed a bit. However, she was still thinking about how unusual Xiao Ju's meeting with Yang Mingji just now. She felt that it was a bit strange. After a while, she slipped out of the door again. Seeing that there was no one around, she knocked on Lin Shuanghe's door. Lin Shuanghe yawned as he opened the door. When he saw that it was Yan, he immediately grabbed the door frame tightly. "Brother you have to keep your word. We've already switched rooms, so we definitely can't switch back. I won't leave even if I die." He thought that Yan was here to switch rooms. Yan said helplessly, "I'm not here to switch rooms. I have something to ask you." "That's even more unacceptable." Lin Shuanghe said seriously, "I'm a gentleman. We're a single man. If some people see this, wouldn't it be a big problem?" What nonsense was he spouting? Yan couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He pushed him into the room and followed in, closing the door behind him. Lin Shuanghe was pushed into a chair by Yan. He covered his chest with both hands and said forcefully, "Sister you can't play with your friend's wife. I'm not that kind of person. I'm asking about Yang Mingji." Yan interrupted him. Lin Shuanghe was stunned. Then, he turned pale with fright. "You've taken a liking to Yang Mingji? Why was there only love in this person's heart?" Yan took a deep breath. "It's not that I've taken a liking to him. I just want to ask you if anything happened between official Yang and the governor. Previously, I heard General Yan say that official Yang is a good friend of the governor. However, when I was outside, I saw that the two of them didn't look like good friends." After saying this in one breath, Lin Shuanghe finally understood the purpose of Yan's visit. He was stunned for a while. Then, he slowly sat up straight. A worried expression appeared on his usually cheerful face. He sighed and said, "So you've noticed?" Yan asked, "But did something happen between them?" Actually, Yan Nanguang, Huaijin, and Yang Mingji were classmates. Lin Shuanghe put down the fan in his hand and picked up the teapot beside him. He poured a cup of tea and handed it to Yan before pouring another cup for himself. He stared at the tea in the teacup, as if he was reminiscing about the past. His voice was light as he said, "Yan Nanguang is like a fighting cock. He's always competing with this and that. He's not close to us. Back in the day, Huaijin and Yang Mingji and I were best friends. Speaking of which, Yang Mingji and Huaijin should be closer than Huaijin and I were. There wasn't the slightest hint of jealousy or dissatisfaction on his face. He only smiled and said, "After all, I'm not good at both civil and military affairs. With Huaijin, I can only talk about which family's girls are prettier and which restaurant's dishes are newer. Yang Mingji and Huaijin can always talk more than I can. Yang Mingji's health isn't good. When he was young, people secretly said that he was a sissy. Later, when Huaijin took him along, no one dared to say that." He Yan knew all of this. At that time, she thought that talented people were often similar to talented people. Xiao Zhu and Yang Mingji were both outstanding. No wonder they could become close friends. "And then?" she asked. "And then?" Lin Shuanghe lowered his head. His gaze gradually became sad and frustrated. In the year of the Xiao family's accident, the situation in the imperial court was very tense. Xiao Zhongwu died and also bore the crime of incompetent command in the Battle of Mingshui. The Xiao family's collapse was imminent. Prime Minister Su's power in the imperial court became more and more rampant. Although the students in the Xianchang school were all from rich and powerful families, no one dared to speak up for the Xiao family in the teeth of the storm. Except for Lin Shuanghe. His family practiced medicine in the imperial court. Lin Qingtan and Lin Mu didn't care about the matters of the imperial court. Lin Shuanghe had no intention of becoming an official. After learning that the Xiao family had an accident, Lin Shuanghe begged his father and grandfather to say good words for Xiao Zhongwu in front of the emperor. Lin Mu really did say it. His skill in women's medicine was superb. He was also very tactful. Many concubines in the imperial harem had a good relationship with him. Lin Mu picked a few concubines to talk to the emperor for a few days. He didn't mention Xiao Zhongwu's matter. He only said that the two young masters of the Xiao family were pitiful. They were both young talents, but something happened in the Fu. The emperor was also a person who took pity on talents. He was also soft-hearted. As he talked, he really felt that Xiao Jing and Xiao Zhu were pitiful. The crime of the Battle of Mingshui was only focused on Xiao Zhongwu. The Xiao family was not implicated. But just this was not enough. The military power of the South Fu army had not been taken back. Even if the emperor didn't punish the other members of the Xiao family because of old friendship, the Xiao family without military power was like a piece of fatty meat without the protection of weapons. As long as others wanted to, they could come up and take a bite. They were not Prime Minister Su's opponent. The emperor's mercy would only fade as Xiao Zhongwu died. If they wanted to take back military power, they could only start now. It would not work if they were late. And in the imperial court, except for Xiao Zhongwu's former subordinates and imperial censor Shen, no one dared to speak. In the Xianchang Guan, Xiao Zhu only had two close friends. One was Lin Shuanghe, the other was Yang Mingji. Lin Shuanghe begged his father to speak for Xiao Zhu. Yang Mingji's father, Yang Daren, was the scholar of Guanwen Palace Hall. He was once the emperor's hand-picked scholar. Emperor Wen Xian liked him very much. If Yang Daren spoke, the emperor might listen. Xiao Zhu asked Yang Mingji for help. Lin Shuanghe still remembered what Yang Mingji said at that time. His eyes were full of anxiety. He patted Xiao Zhu's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I will definitely persuade my father to speak for General Xiao in the imperial court. I asked the emperor to thoroughly investigate the inside story of the Battle of Mingshui. Huaijin, don't worry. Brother Lin and I will always be with you." He was gentle and weak, but his words were powerful. Lin Shuanghe never doubted Yang Mingji's sincerity at that moment. Thinking about it, Xiao Zhu also felt the same. So they waited for Yang Mingji's news. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Yang Mingji did not come to the Xianchang Guan. He only said that he was sick. Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Zhu suspected that Yang Mingji could not leave the residence, or that he was locked up at home. They did not suspect anything else. So after some discussion, the two disguised themselves as servants and sneaked into the Yang residence to find Yang Mingji. At that time, Yang Mingji was practicing calligraphy in his room. There was no lock on the door, no house arrest, and he was not even sick. He looked the same as before. Because he was not as tired at home as he was at school, his complexion was even better. Mingji, Lin Shuanghe looked at him in surprise. Why didn't you go to the school? Huaijin and I thought something had happened to you. Yang Mingji stood up and looked at them. More accurately, he looked at Xiaoju. He did not speak. Xiaoju seemed to understand something and said, "Your father." Sorry, Yang Mingji did not wait for Xiaoju to finish speaking before interrupting him. I have broken my promise to you before. My father cannot speak for General Xiao. Why? Lin Shuanghe was anxious. Didn't we agree? It's fine, Xiaoju spoke. He lowered his eyes and said, I forced you to do this. You don't need to apologize. Lin Shuanghe did not speak. He knew how difficult it was to ask for an explanation at this time. He should not have blamed Yang Mingji. However, the greater the hope, the harder it was to bear the disappointment. He Yan looked at the person in front of him and asked in confusion, because of this, did the governor and Governor Yang break off their relationship? Perhaps it was not that Governor Yang did not work hard for this matter, but because Scholar Yang was unwilling to let it go, he did not succeed. She did not believe that Yang Mingji was a cold-blooded and heartless person because Yang Mingji was actually very kind and amiable. When he was at Xianchangguan, He Yan did not receive much kindness from the youths. Yang Mingji was definitely one of them. Moreover, a person who was passionate about poetry and policy should be especially righteous and passionate. Lin Shuanghe did not immediately answer her question. He was silent. After a while, he said, I thought the same that day. Perhaps Yang Mingji had some difficulties. And then before we left, Yang Mingji said something. His voice was slightly uneven, and the shadow of the past appeared in front of his eyes. Yang Mingji stopped the two people who were about to leave and said, Huaijin, have you ever thought that perhaps there was no inside story behind the Battle of Mingshui, and that it was because of General Xiao? Xiaoju had already walked to the door. Hearing this, he turned his head. The youth's expression was calm, and the outline of his face was as beautiful as a painting. He did not speak. He just walked to Yang Mingji's side and threw a punch. That punch was really ruthless, Lin Shuanghe hissed and gloated. Yang Mingji's health was not good. He was beaten to the point that he had to lie in bed for half a month. Lord Yang was so angry that he almost wrote a memorial, but in the end, he did not. Perhaps he felt sorry for Huaijin. But it was useless, Lin Shuanghe sighed slightly. Not long after that, Huaijin went to the palace to ask for an order. He took 3,000 people to Guo City and became famous after that battle. Chapter 184. He Yan did not expect that there was such a thing between Yang Mingji and Xiaoju. After listening to Lin Shuanghe, he thought for a while. Indeed, Yang Mingji's last words were too hurtful. But why would he do that for no reason? If he did not want to help, then he did not want to help. Why did he have to stab people in the heart like that? Moreover, with Yang Mingji's original personality, he would not be so sharp and mean. If He Yan thought this way, as Yang Mingji's former good friend, Xiaoju should have thought of this. He Yan asked, what happened after that? Did the governor not contact Sir Yang anymore? Was there any misunderstanding? Lin Shuanghe shook his head. After Huaijin led the troops to Guo City, he rarely returned to the capital. However, not long after Huaijin left, Yang Mingji stopped studying at the Xianchang school. Originally, with his talent, I thought that he would be the top scholar and stay in the capital. With his father's relationship and his own ability, it would not be difficult. However, since then, he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. We are all brothers. He was indeed in the wrong about Huaijin. After that, I stopped contacting him. Therefore, I don't know when he became the governor of Jinling City. It seemed that these brothers had really parted ways. He Yan thought to himself. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, followed by Yan He's impatient urging, Lin Shuanghe, open the door. Lin Shuanghe got up and walked to the door to open it. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Yan He standing at the door. Lin Shuanghe smiled. Generals Yan, may I know why you are looking for me at such a late hour? Yan He was about to speak when he saw He Yan in the room. He asked suspiciously, why is he in your room? I'm here to see if there are any ants, He Yan said. If there are, I can chase them away for Brother Lin. Yes, yes, yes. Lin Shuanghe said seriously, I invited her here to drive the ants away. Don't randomly suspect my relationship with her. What nonsense. Yan He frowned. Hurry up and change your clothes and follow us. Where are we going? Lin Shuanghe was baffled. Yan He coughed lightly. I'll get someone to tell Yang Mingji that we'll be going to the Qinhuai River for a cruise tonight. As a local governor, he should naturally prepare hospitality for us. Quickly change your clothes and inform Xiao Huaijin. No one had expected Yan He's actions. Lin Shuanghe was dumbfounded. He asked. Why do we need a cruise? With Yang Mingji and Xiao Huaijin's appearance, who are they trying to fool? Yan He said proudly. I can tell at a glance. I'm kind-hearted today and am willing to be a bridge for them. Xiao Huaijin won't come to Jinling every day. If they spend more time together, the misunderstanding will naturally be resolved. He played with the ends of his ponytail. These years, I've been running around outside, so I've learned a lot about the secular world. For example, Xiao Huaijin's personality is not likable. It's impossible for him to resolve the misunderstanding between Yang Mingji and himself. Yang Mingji isn't that annoying. I'm not doing this for Xiao Huaijin. I'm only doing this for Yang Mingji. Seeing that Lin Shuanghe didn't say anything, Yan He raised his chin. How is it? Do you think I'm very magnanimous? Hurry up and thank me for your close friend. He Yan, Lin Shuanghe. I really have to thank you. Yan He was truly a talent. He Yan sighed in his heart. He was always able to accurately step into Xiao Ju's forbidden area. No wonder the two of them didn't see eye to eye when they were in the Xianchang mansion. No need to thank me, Yan He said carelessly. I'll go and tell Chu Xilan. Wait, Lin Shuanghe asked. It's fine if it's Yang Mingji, but why do you have to ask Chu Xilan too? We're all staying here. If he's the only one left, it'll make me look petty. Moreover, as an official, you have to be more tactful. Do you think you're very powerful if you fight like a cockfight? Yan He sneered. Oh, I forgot. You're not an official, so naturally, you don't know these things. He patted Lin Shuanghe's shoulder and walked towards Chu Zhao's courtyard. Lin Shuanghe and He Yan looked at each other, speechless. As expected of Yan He pulled in two enemies at once. Yang Mingji wasn't counted. If Chu Zhao was added, Xiao Ju would probably be angered to death. She might not even follow them. Sister Lin Shuanghe said, why don't you go and tell Huaijin? He Yan, let's go together. This was going to cost her her life. How could she bear it alone? The two of them dragged their feet and struggled for a moment. Finally, they went to Xiao Ju's room and explained what Yan He said. They thought that Xiao Ju would definitely not follow them. Unexpectedly, she turned around and said, okay. At this moment, He Yan and Lin Shuanghe were both shocked. She actually agreed just like that, and her expression was so calm. Lin Shuanghe whispered to He Yan, he won't wait until we get on the boat and fight with Yang Mingji, right? That's too undignified. He Yan, it's very possible. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows slightly, you're not going. Yes, of course we're going. Lin Shuanghe moved closer to He Yan's ear and whispered, you have to go. If they fight, remember to stop them. He Yan was speechless. After they agreed, they went back to their rooms to change their clothes. They were travel-worn from their journey. Now that they were in Jinling, if they dressed like they were in a hurry to get on the boat, they would look out of place. He Yan asked someone to fetch some water. After he took a bath, he changed into a new set of clothes. When they left Rundu, the citizens sent them off with a lot of food and clothes. The material wasn't very expensive, but it was very fitting. He Yan looked at himself in the mirror. The youth was wearing a green shirt and cloth boots. His hair was tied into a simple bun, and he had delicate features. He didn't look any different from the students in the Xianchang school in his previous life. She seemed to have grown a bit taller than when she first arrived at the Yangzhou guards. Standing in the room, she was as tall and straight as a poplar tree, young and full of vitality. After He Yan finished tidying up, he pushed open the door and walked out. As soon as he walked out, he found that everyone had already finished tidying up and was waiting for him outside. Yan He impatiently said, "You're just a little Muan Lang. Why are you so troublesome? There are so many people waiting for you. Are you putting on makeup inside?" He Yan thought to himself, what a coincidence. She really was putting on makeup inside. A girl pretending to be a man also needed to put in a lot of effort. Xiaoju glanced at him and smiled slightly, "Let's go." The residence that Yang Mingji arranged for them wasn't far from the Qinhuai River. As a result, they didn't take a carriage and walked towards the Qinhuai River on their own. Their group was made up of either handsome youths or handsome men. They were particularly eye-catching as they walked on the streets. From time to time, there would be bold girls who pretended to sprain their ankles and leaned forward. However, Xiaoju didn't like to come into contact with people, so he naturally avoided them. Yan He wasn't the type to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. He already left some leeway by not reprimanding or punishing them. Chu Zhao had a beautiful servant girl by his side, so those girls retreated. In the end, the ones who suffered were Lin Shuanghe and He Yan. He Yan couldn't remember how many beautiful girls he had helped. It was just that those girls looked at him with tender gazes that made it hard for him to resist. For a moment, he felt that it was better to be as innocent and cute as Song Tao Tao. Lin Shuanghe was the same. He didn't know how many times he called Mimi. Yan He looked at the two of them with schadenfreude and said to Lin Shuanghe, "Lin Shuanghe, after so many years, I didn't expect you to still be so popular with women." Lin Shuanghe tidied his slightly wrinkled robe and smiled slightly, "Of course, just like how you are always disliked by women." Yan He snorted, "I already have a wife. I don't need to be liked by others." He Yan stilled and looked at General Yan. "General Yan is already married?" When he said this, Xiaoju and Chu Zhao both looked at He Yan. Lin Shuanghe opened his fan, "You didn't expect this, right? Our General Yan is still young. It's a pity that he got married at such a young age. I think you are jealous." Yan He sneered. He Yan was a little strange. She rarely interacted with her schoolmates in the Xianchang gymnasium after she joined the army. She didn't know when Yan He got married. Although it was understandable for Yan He to get married at his age, it was hard to imagine what he would be like as a husband with his arrogant and egotistical temperament that was similar to a fighting cock. It was also at this moment that He Yan truly felt that the youngsters back then had all grown up. When they were talking, they had already arrived at the Qinhuai River. A few manservants were waiting by the river. When they saw He Yan and the others, they went forward and said, "Military Governor Xiao, General Yan, the governor has already prepared a boat and is waiting on the boat." Actually, with the Yang family's background, Yang Mingji didn't need to do this. This attitude was already very humble. However, in this group of people, his close friends had already become estranged from him. The only one left was Yan He, who had good intentions but did not know how to speak. Chu Zhao and Yang Mingji weren't too familiar. He Yan had even changed his shell. Therefore, when the group of people boarded the boat, they already sensed Yang Mingji's awkwardness. Yang Mingji had already taken off his governor robe and changed into a sandalwood-colored long gown. Although he was an official, his face didn't have the slightest worldly aura of an official. Standing here, he was even more restrained and had the arrogance of a young man. He Yan felt as if he had returned to the Xianchang gymnasium. Yang Mingji was still the Yang Mingji of the past. He patted Yang Mingji's shoulder and walked to the bow of the boat to take a look, saying, "You really know how to enjoy life. You picked such a good place like Jinling. Little did you know that a few days ago, we were fighting in the Rundu, not far from your Jinling. That was hell on earth. They already ate people." Yang Mingji was stunned. Really? Then, a hint of anger appeared in his eyes. He moved his lips as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Yuto did evil in Jiang and Rundu's Huayuan, but Jinling City was not affected at all. It was still peaceful. On the Qinhuai River, many pleasure boats and pleasure boats flowed down the river. The sound of stringed instruments floated leisurely on the surface of the water. The shore was brightly lit and the flowers were like brocade. He Yan sat in the boat and looked out through the window. The water was almost illuminated by the lanterns and fishing fires on the boats. It was as if it was truly a peaceful and prosperous time. This place was different from Jiang. The boats in Jiang were small, the water market was lively, and the women in Jiang were bold and simple. Jinling, on the other hand, was like an old dream. Among the boats and lanterns, the beautiful scenery was full of spring. He didn't know which boat it came from, but the sound of a pipa could be heard. The sound of the pipa was like pearls falling on a jade plate. It made people's thoughts wander. Lin Shuanghe stood at the bow of the boat and said with a smile, "Jinling City is exactly the same as it was many years ago. The boats, the water, and the pipa sound are all the same." When Ing Xiang heard this, she asked curiously, "Young Master Lin, have you been to Jinling before?" "Of course." Lin Shuanghe spread his fan and said, "Speaking of which, I wasn't the only one who came to Jinling last time. Brother Yan, Huaijin. Master Yang, right?" He then looked at He Yan, who was looking at the scenery on the water, and said, "Brother He, this should be your first time in Jinling, right? What do you think?" He Yan nodded, "It's very beautiful." She thought that this was not her first time in Jinling. Just as Lin Shuanghe said, the last time she came to Jinling, she was also on the boat. That was a summer day in the Xianchang Gymnasium, just like the current season. There was a poetry gathering in Jinling City, and famous scholars from Dewei were invited. This was the first time in 10 years, and the opportunity was hard to find. The teachers of the Xianchang Gymnasium wanted to let the youths see the world, so they picked the 10 best youths in the scholarly arts and received invitations to the poetry gathering. Of course, He Yan didn't receive an invitation. Although her scholarly arts were a bit better than her martial arts, she still couldn't reach the top 10. However, He Yan didn't have much interest in leaving the capital and going to Jinling. Wearing a mask was very inconvenient. Moreover, she had to interact with those youths day and night. It was hard to even find a time to avoid them, so it was better if she didn't go. Thinking of this, she didn't have much regret. That day, He Yan studied for a while after school as usual. The sun was about to set. She estimated that there was still some food left in the kitchen, so she got up and walked to the kitchen. The Xianchang Gymnasium wouldn't embezzle the students' food. Whenever she went to the kitchen, there would always be some pastries and food. He Yan had just walked to the kitchen when she saw that the door to the firewood room was ajar. She had just walked to the door when she heard a youth's excited voice coming from inside, "Brother Lin's suggestion is good. Since we're going to Jinling, why don't we go to Ruyunlu to broaden our horizons? I've heard of the flower fairy's name a long time ago. If I could meet her, I wouldn't have lived in vain. Right?" Lin Shuanghe's voice continued, "Everyone says that Ruyunlu's beauties and fine wine are the best in Dewei. How can a poetry gathering be more interesting than Ruyunlu? I think we should stay in Jinling for a few more days. The teachers won't follow us anyway. Everyone should take care of their own bodyguards and manservants. We can have fun for a few days. Other people won't know. He Yen listened in a daze. She knew about Ru Yunlu. She heard that out of all the brothels in Dawei, Ru Yunlu had the most beauties. Moreover, each of them was fat and thin and had different moods. It was like 100 flowers blooming. Among them, the flower fairy was extraordinarily beautiful and unforgettable. This group of people actually used the poetry gathering as an excuse to secretly visit a brothel. If the teachers found out, each of their legs would be broken. He Yen sighed at their courage. She didn't want to get involved in this matter and was about to leave. Suddenly, a voice came from inside. Who is it? The next moment, the door to the firewood room was opened. A group of youths sat around and looked over. He Yen grabbed his collar and angrily said, "You were eavesdropping." "I didn't want to eavesdrop." He Yen explained, "I was just passing by." They were the ones who spoke so loudly and didn't close the door. They were so arrogant. How could they blame her? He threw her into the firewood room and closed the door. The youths looked at her with burning eyes and talked at once. That brat Hirufei actually heard it. How unlucky. Why don't we not go? What if this guy tells on us? No, it's not easy to go to Jinling. How can we ruin it because of this guy? It's too much of a loss. Then what should we do? Kill him. A youth said sinisterly, bury him alive on the spot. He Yen was shocked and said weakly. You don't have to be so violent. I actually didn't hear anything. Lin, brother Lin. She asked Lin Shuanghe for help. In any case, they had progressed together before. At this time, he couldn't just leave her in the lurch. Lin Shuanghe stared at her and thought for a moment. He closed his fan. Aya, it's not a big deal. I believe that even if brother he heard it, he won't tell on us. Is your belief useful? He's face was very dark. Are you going to take responsibility if something happens? I won't take responsibility. However, we can just bring him along. Lin Shuanghe spread his hands. This way, he won't harm himself. Lin Shuanghe could always come up with a strange solution for these things. Yen struggled. Sir won't agree. I don't have an invitation, you don't have to worry about that. Lin Shuanghe smiled, leave it to me. Just like that, Yen was forced to go to Jinling with the other youths. Lin Shuanghe didn't know where he got the invitation, but Sir agreed. Although Madam he was a bit uneasy, Yuanshan was very supportive. As long as it was something that could bring glory to Hirufei, he was very supportive of it. Therefore, without much effort, Yen went to Jinling with the other youths for the first time. They went by water. It was Yan's first time on a big boat. He vomited so much that he almost threw up his heart and liver. The other youths didn't like to bring a burden like him, so they laughed at his weak body. The only one who had a good relationship with Yen was Lin Shuanghe, but he had already become good friends with the boatman's daughter. When he was free, he would tell stories to the boatman's daughter, which made her laugh non-stop. He didn't have time to care about brother who was forced to go on this long journey because of him. Yen couldn't say anything about the bitterness in his heart. He raised his head and leaned against the side of the boat, listening to the cheerful laughter of the youths playing cricket. He looked at the cold moon in the sky and felt the cold wind blowing. His heart was particularly cold. Just as he was thinking about whether or not he could fish on this boat, he suddenly saw someone patting his shoulder from behind. Yen subconsciously turned his head. The next moment, something cold was stuffed into his mouth. He was shocked and wanted to scream, so that thing slid down his throat and into his stomach. Cough cough cough. Yen coughed violently and looked at the person in front of him. The white-robed youth supported himself with both hands on the side of the boat and casually looked at her. Under the moonlight, his pupils clearly reflected his own image. Yen hurriedly touched his throat and asked, "You, what did you give me to eat?" Xiaoju lazily said, "Poison." "What, He Yan turned pale with fright. Shoo, he supported his chin with one hand and looked at the distant flowing water. Don't scream. If you scream too loudly, you will die very quickly. He Yan's tears were about to fall. I have no grievances with you. Why do you want to harm me? The youth's mouth twitched. His usually lazy face had a hint of evil. Isn't this because I am afraid that you will tell on me? I won't tell on you. He Yan panicked. Quickly give me the antidote. There is no antidote, Xiao Ju indifferently replied. There is no antidote. He didn't look like he was lying. He Yan was stunned for a moment. He only felt that his legs were weak. He couldn't support himself and sat down on the ground. Why is it like this? So these youths tricked me into coming out just to make it easier to kill me? It seems that this place is indeed very suitable for killing people. If a dead person is thrown into the river, there will be no trace of them. But if they are eaten by fish after they die, will it be cold? At that time, she was not very brave and had many thoughts. After thinking for a long time, she finally raised her head and asked the youth standing at the bow of the boat, how many days do I have left to live? Xiao Ju didn't expect her to ask this question. He was startled for a moment and snorted, 5 days. 5 days. He Yan murmured, only 3 days until we reach Jinling. Well, there are still 2 days left. I can go and see the flower fairy. Since I am going to die, it is not a loss to see the beauty before I die. She thought so. Xiao Ju sneered and didn't answer. He Yan hugged the mast of the boat and sat for a while. After an unknown amount of time, she stood up and walked in shakily. After 2 steps, she suddenly realized something. She didn't vomit. He Yan understood in hindsight. He jogged in front of Xiao Ju. She looked up and asked him excitedly, Huijin brother, I don't get seasick anymore. Did you just give me medicine for seasickness? Although the mask covered her face, it couldn't hide the smile on her face and the joy in her voice. Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently and curved his lips. Although his tone was gentle, his words were harsh. Idiot. He turned and walked in. He Yan looked at his back and felt that this person was really boring. Medicine for seasickness was fine. Why did he have to tease and scare her? Although she was really scared. He Yan couldn't help but laugh when she remembered the funny things that happened when she was young. In the boat not far away, the sound of the pipa came from a woman's singing voice. Sung mountain far away, Wu mountain far away, the small boat travels all the way, the dream is hard to pull back, fleeting life song several times. It's hard to think, it's hard to hate, but now you and I are separated, the spring breeze is old and young, the woman's voice was gentle and clear. It was even more moving than the sound of the pipa. Lin Shuanghe pointed at the boat with his fan and said, that's it. Back then, the flower fairy's music was like this too. It lingered in the air for 3 days, He suddenly froze. As if he thought of something, he quickly walked forward and said something to the servant on the boat. The servant quickly left. Not long after, the boat in front stopped. The curtain was lifted and a woman walked out with a pipa in her arms. The woman was wearing a light red dress. Her eyes were half curved and her lips were like cherry blossoms. She was soft and gentle, charming and delicate. Standing at the bow of the boat, just her appearance alone was enough to make people's hearts ripple. The lights on the boat made it difficult for people to see her face clearly. However, even if they couldn't see her clearly, they knew that she was a peerless beauty. She held the pipa in her arms and didn't speak. She just bowed to the crowd. It was like an old dream by the Qinhuai River, illuminating the ignorant eyes of the youths. Traveling fairy. Lin Shuanghe said in surprise, you're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.